Please clap.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the NBA SoRare Ultimate Trade Deadline Guide. So, we have got a lot going on. I scheduled this yesterday before things went just completely off the rails, and even just today, Kyrie Irving's been traded, and it looks like the Warriors are done for because it looks like Steph Curry's season is over. So with that being said, I was going to go down a long list of teams, but I think we'll start with I think we'll go ahead and start with the Nets and then get to that list. So before we get started, just make sure to like the stream or like the video and subscribe. I was going to make this a bunch of videos, but I just realized there was way too much information to edit and have time to put it all out before the trade deadline, which is coming around. So I just wanted to get this information out there in case anyone thought this was worth their time. I think there's a lot of interesting buys and flips you can do with SoRare right now, considering we've seen some crazy pumps based on these trades already. So, real quick, also before we jump in it, I do have a link below in the description. If you are into DFS or you're into the NBA and you don't have an NBA SoRare account, go ahead and click the link below. You'll get 20 free cards, common cards for the common competitions. And if you really like NBA SoRare and you want to maybe buy some limited cards, play in some limited competitions or higher tiers and control your lineup a little more, when you use that link, which is my affiliate link, you will get a free limited card airdrop to you once you buy five limited or higher tier cards on the new auction marketplace. So, if you're interested, go ahead and check it out. And then, homie, if I would just recommend you make an account using the link and get the free cards. Just play the free competitions and see if it's something for you. I don't think this scratches the itch for everyone, but for someone like myself, I've really enjoyed really enjoy DFS. I love SoRare because it really scratches that itch. And there's a lot of ways to attack it. But like I said, whether you like are really into that stuff or not, I just say create an account, give it a try, see what you think before you start spending any money. Ghostface. I really don't know what to feel about the Kyrie Irving news, to be honest. It's interesting. So let's go ahead and talk. This is going to be probably a long stream. This is probably going to be 3 or 4 hours. Like I said, I was going to make a bunch of videos and decided just streaming makes more sense in this case. So for people who are watching back, feel free to skip around. This will probably be a 3-4 hour stream because we're going to talk about a lot of information here. I have a pretty extensive document I've built. So, I think before we jump into these teams, we'll obviously start with the Mavs and the Nets because of this crazy trade that happened. But before we jump into these teams, I just want to kind of set some rules that we should all probably follow leading to this trade deadline with NBA SoRare. So let me share my screen. And so we can see right now that Kyrie, who just got traded, his price has shot up, right? I think that's pretty evident here. He was actually dipping because of the whole drama. People weren't sure if he was even going to play. He got all the way down to like under $50 and he spiked all the way to 70. And I think that's a common theme you can see in players. If you go ahead and take a look at Rui Hachimura, who, as we know, was traded to the Lakers earlier, we can take a look and let's go ahead and switch to dollars. And we can see that you can kind of tell exactly when he got traded. And he shot all the way up to around $30 before settling at a $20 floor, which is still much higher than this $10 floor here. So one of the rules that I have in play is if I think a player, if I'm buying their card and I'm not necessarily buying them as a future cheat code, I want to list my cards in advance for before a trade happens. So let's go ahead and take a look at SoRare. So one of the players I've been targeting the whole season, knowing he'll probably get traded, is Jakob Poeltl. As you can see, his floor is 15. But if we go ahead and we go to my cards here, we can see that I have already listed 3 of my Jakob Poeltls at varying price levels. And my hope is that if Jakob Poeltl gets traded, we're going to see a similar moonshot like we've seen with every other player. And I want to catch it on as it goes up, as opposed to having to settle for the price here, which, I mean, if I have to sell at this price, it still should be profitable because it still should be higher than what I paid for. But if I can catch it at the top here or around the top, like that's awesome. So I would just say, if you have players that think are going to be traded, I would list them in advance and put the listing for 7 days and just put it at a price that you think is comfortable, that you're comfortable with, that you think is like a good profit margin to take as you slim down your lineup, because it might be your last chance to sell it that high. But as we can see with Rui, I think he pumped pretty hard because, LeBron and AD, and I think maybe even Westbrook were sitting. So there might be another opportunity to sell too. So not financial advice. You kind of got to do your own research and decide what you're comfortable with and when you want to sell these players. But I would say that's a pretty good rule to have, is list them in advance. So in case they're traded, you don't miss the possible pump. The other thing I want to say is, looking at my notes here. Oh no, the other rule I had was that Kyrie Irving might hold up this trade deadline. He kind of might hold it hostage, similar to how Kevin Durant kind of held the offseason hostage as everyone was waiting for that to drop. But Kyrie has since been traded since I made that note, so it no longer matters. All right, so let's just jump into the teams here. I've divided these up into 3 different segments. We have teams that are buyers. So like a team like the Mavs, who's on that list, who just bought Kyrie Irving. We have teams that are sellers, and then we have teams that are on the fence. I've wrote out a pretty extensive document. We will be making some changes on the fly because of the fact that I think the Warriors, the Mavs, and the Nets have all drastically changed where they sit on things. Yeah, I do think the trade floodgates have opened up. I do think there was a little bit of a question chops as to what some of these players would be worth. Once again, similar how the Rudy Gobert trade kind of messed everything up, where everyone's like, oh, we have to get this many picks. We need this many first rounds. I think Kyrie, who is probably the biggest trade player out there that we know of. I mean, there's a chance someone like a Bradley Beal or something like that gets traded. But even then, I think Kyrie is still probably bigger, considering he's like an active all-star. But since he's traded, I do think to some degree we see these trade floodgates open up, because there's a lot of these players, like a lot of these teams, like the Lakers, for example, who probably were trying to get Kyrie. Well, he's off the table, so who do they go for next? Let's see. And just want to make sure for people in the chat, there's no echo, right? Everything sounds good. I'm not wearing headphones, and I usually don't do a solo stream, so I just want to double check here. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the first team. The first team I have on my list is the Nets. So like we said, we already looked at Kyrie. So I don't think Kyrie's already been traded. So there's the cat's out of the bag. There's really no profit margins there or any type of preparing in advance since that's happened. And it's hard to tell right now if the Nets are going to be buyers or sellers here. I had them on the fence, and I still don't know. Are they going to trade Kevin Durant, or are they going to trade Joe Harris? Are they going to try and trade Joe Harris and get better? Or are they just going to throw in the towel and try to trade Durant for an insane amount of assets? Time will still tell. So we can take a look at Durant too after we look at Harris, but I'm kind of leaning that they're going to try to do something still. Dinwiddie is a pretty good player. Him next to KD, I feel like that's a pretty good possible team. So before Kyrie was traded, I think Joe Harris was kind of mentioned a lot because Joe Harris is a player that will get Joe Harris is a player that is a great shooter, but the Nets already have Curry, they have Yuta, they already have shooters. So trading someone when in a league where shooters are super valuable, trading someone like Joe Harris, you could get a pretty big return and possibly get some really good assets that you would need in order to make a playoff push. So right now, Joe Harris is sitting at about $7 right now. He would be more of a dart throw. I think it's possible he would get traded to a pretty big team. Like he would get traded to a team that will really want to utilize him. He might even, like, for example, let's say the Lakers get Joe Harris. He would probably be a starter. He would probably get more opportunities because you have LeBron and Westbrook and people that aren't the best shooters dishing it out to Joe Harris, who theoretically should have a lot more open shots, not have to create a shot as much. So I think Joe Harris is a decent dart throw. If he's traded to the Lakers or something with a cap of 17, he might be somewhat of a cheat code even for a couple weeks for the rest of the season. I'm personally not going to buy a Joe Harris. I don't find nothing about Joe Harris really excites me. I don't think he has a particularly high ceiling. And, if he does get traded, you could probably make $4 or $5. But personally, not worth the risk in my book because I don't really want to be stuck with a Joe Harris. But we can see that he hasn't had any substantial speculation pump, which is always good to see and good to assess if you're really trying to determine if you should buy a player or not. Like, we don't want to buy at the top. We want to buy at the bottom, and we always want to have options. We want to either use them as a cheat code or sell them on a trade or a future pump. The one player that I do think Kyrie leaving benefits the most. So let's talk about it. I think there are 4 players. Let me pull up the list and we can take a look real quick. I'm going to go to Player Finder on the scouting section of SoRare Data. And shout out to SoRare Data. I love this website a ton. They have a lot of really cool features and a lot of really cool data. All right, so here's the Brooklyn Nets. And with Kyrie leaving, I think there are a couple people. Well, not Kyrie leaving and Dinwiddie coming. I think there are a couple players that are affected. The first one that's affected negatively, I think, is Cam Thomas. If you have a Cam Thomas, it might be worth selling him. As you can see, he's still kind of on the pump. He was sitting at around $5-6, and the floor for him is 16, so it looks like he's come down since that peak where I think he put up 55 SoRare points yesterday or something like that. Maybe 59. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Cam Thomas, everyone's like, oh, this guy's the next guy up now that Kyrie's gone. However, Spencer Dinwiddie is basically coming and immediately taking over. Cam Thomas is going to go right back down to the usage and minutes that he was probably at. He's probably going to be lost on the bench. The Nets have a very deep bench, and as a result, someone like Cam Thomas, who is not the greatest defender, will probably get lost in it. So I personally, if I had a Cam Thomas, I would sell him, which is unfortunate because I love Cam Thomas. The next person on my list was Royce O'Neal. I think Royce O'Neal kind of stays similar to where he is. Once again, them picking up Dinwiddie for Kyrie really doesn't allow O'Neal to get a ton more usage or a ton more minutes or anything like that. But the one player, there's a couple other players on the list that I had, but I think the one player that's actually really interesting now is TJ Warren. Now, TJ Warren is injured pretty consistently. He's not the healthiest guy. And as a result, Maybe he's someone you don't want to, put all your eggs in one basket. Let's see. This looks like December is kind of when he really started. So let's get rid of that. But we can see TJ Warren here has been on a downward trend. You can pick him up for $10 right now. And with KD currently injured, KD's a little older. He has some injury. He has some injury tendencies. It's a little harder for him to stay healthy. He seems to get injured every year. I feel like there are going to be windows for TJ Warren to get massive usage and massive minutes, especially if KD's injured, and with Kyrie, can be a bit of a ball hog, a bit of a ball dominant player, gone. I think it gives some windows for TJ to really be a cheat code for certain upcoming weeks. We can see he's got a cap of 14, which is pretty dope. Allows you to fit him into a lot of lineups, a contender or a champion lineup, and at a price of $10, not a terrible dart throw. Personally, personally, TJ Warren, I think, is the most interesting player on the Nets after this news. And then I think the other player that's interesting for a different reason is probably Dorian Finney-Smith, who was traded to the Nets. He's someone I would not buy right now, but if you have him, it might be worth flipping him. We can see that he's absolutely skyrocketed. But the question is, do you think Dorian Finney-Smith is going to be playing with the Nets? Do you think he's going to stay on the Nets? The Nets have now Ben Simmons, Royce O'Neal, and Dorian Finney-Smith, who all kind of play the same role. It seems like the Nets are stuck with Ben Simmons. I'm sure they would love to get rid of him if they could, but that seems unlikely. So as a result, if you think Dorian Finney-Smith is going to play with the Nets and have a substantial role, I think he's an incredible cheat code to hold on to. His cap is a little maxed out. We probably see this dip a little bit as he finds his place with the Nets. But if you think there's a chance that Dorian Finney-Smith kind of gets lost in the bench or even gets bought out and maybe signs with a different team, I think selling the pump is probably ideal. Shout out to the additional people who have joined. As TST kind of points out, this is a pretty serious spike here. After seeing a dip from this last spike that he was recovering from, this is kind of a bit of a double spike here, because we can see he was going for under 10 and he was going back down to that 10 and he shot all the way up to basically 20 now because of that trade. So personally, if I had a DFS, someone that I mentioned on an early SoRare Steals video, I would be flipping him immediately, taking my profits, and maybe buying him back if I really liked what I saw on the Nets. But like I said, I think TJ Warren is still, I think, the most exciting player on the Nets that might benefit from this trade, especially, if Joe Harris also gets traded. That's just another guy who takes shots that's gone. And when you have TJ Warren on the same court as Ben Simmons, Ben Simmons is not going to be putting up a lot of shots. TJ Warren will probably be the one kind of taking control. So that was a team that I had labeled as on the fence, and I still think they're on the fence because, they could trade KD and just, like I said, sell out, or they could try to salvage this team, trading Joe Harris. So that one's interesting. The other team that we're going to talk about right away that I had as a buyer, and turns out they definitely were because they just got Kyrie, is the Mavs. I don't think anyone on the Mavs is worth talking about, however, besides Reggie Bullock, who technically on the depth chart is behind DFS as a bench player. He will probably now start at least until Christian Wood comes back. As you can see, it seems like a couple people kind of are picking up on this. They're buying him up. We can see he's hit almost $8, and he was at $5 before. I believe I mentioned Dorian Finney-Smith back when he was, or Reggie Bullock back when he was probably around here when he was under $4. And I said there was a good a good chance for him to have some opportunities. I'm not super hot on Reggie Bullock. So, Ghostface, I agree with you. I'm inclined to believe that DFS plays, but the Nets situation is just weird. And until we understand what their situation is, I'm just not confident in a brand new player coming in when they have multiple players who like fit his role type of deal. Like I said, you have a Royce O'Neal, you have a Ben Simmons who are all competing for that same spot. Granted, I would take DFS over either of those players. But coaches do weird things. DFS is coming in from a different team. It will take him, there will be a bit of a learning curve to adjust. I just personally wouldn't hold on to DFS or play him in a lineup thinking that he's immediately going to benefit from the trade. I think there's an opportunity probably to pick him up after the hype has died down a little. And like to your point, I think it's a 50-50. I think there's a very good chance he does play a lot as well. And being on the train wreck that being on the train wreck that the Nets are, he might really benefit in terms of usage and putting up solid scores. So I think he's definitely worth watching, regardless. But yeah, Reggie Bullock's the only person I think is even somewhat interesting on the Mavs. Them adding Kyrie takes a ton of usage away from everyone else. And when Wood comes back, there will be barely any breathing room for a player like Reggie Bullock. He will almost be there just for defensive purposes. He'll take some open threes. If he's hot, he'll maybe have a good night. I personally am not excited about Reggie Bullock after this trade, but he does probably move up on the depth chart to take that DFS spot as a result. So we've talked about the Mavs. We talked about the Nets. Let's get back to let's go over the buyers first, and then we'll go sellers, and then we'll go back to the on the fence, who I think are the most interesting. Actually, let's talk about the Warriors. Let's talk about the Warriors too. The Warriors had I had them on my buyers list. However, I think a lot has changed because it was just announced that Curry has a partially torn ligament. I think the Warriors season is over in terms of trying to get a ring. I put that out on Twitter. There were some people who were disagreeing, but I think it's more that they thought I was saying the Warriors were going to win if Steph was healthy, which I don't think at all. I just think the Warriors were going to try to make a big move. And as a result, try to make a push at getting another title. So, I think with the Warriors, there's still a chance that someone like a James Wiseman gets traded. I think he's a bit of a sleeper right now. Seems like the Warriors are desperate for, once again, the Warriors are, who knows what they're going to do now. They might just keep him and try for another year because seems like there's no point in rushing and trying to get something for Wiseman, whose value is definitely lower than it was at the beginning of the season. As you can see, I just bought a Wiseman, but I bought him before the Curry news. Unfortunately, I thought for sure he was going to get traded. I don't know. Wiseman, I'm a little less excited about now. It's still possible they could trade him, but I'm gonna obviously hold the one I have. If he gets traded, I will definitely flip it. But, with a cap of 11, if he does get traded, there's a good chance that he is a bit of a cheat code in future weeks. Or, if the Warriors truly give up on this season, they might play him a lot more trying to have him develop. So he's not the worst pickup. He's just like a whatever pickup now that Curry is out. And they're probably more than likely punting the season. However, if the Warriors become sellers as opposed to buyers, I think the one interesting player that we're all forgetting about, I haven't heard any sports analysts talk about this. I haven't heard anyone really think that this is a possibility. But I think there's a very good chance that Draymond Green gets traded. We all know he had that huge incident with Jordan Poole at the beginning of the year. The Warriors already did not want to pay him because he currently is not worth what he is asking for. The money he would be getting would be more of a thank you. Like, we want you to be a Warrior for life. We want you to retire here. But I think that incident with Jordan Poole was the Warriors' golden ticket to get out of it without like any backlash. And if the Warriors are truly going into selling mode, Draymond Green is the #1 selling piece they have. He's going to be a free agent, and they probably won't pay him. So they should try to get something for him. And there are teams out there that probably could use a defensive specialist. I mean, he's a horrible shooter, a horrible offensive player, and probably will be exposed as more of a liability than a plus when he's not playing with the two greatest shooters of all time. But I think there's a very good chance that Draymond Green gets traded. I think you could probably buy a Draymond and flip him for close to 20, maybe 25 even, because yeah, that's a good point. With all these fights lately, Draymond seems like a good fit for any team. Yeah, this is true. This is true. Maybe a team decides they need an enforcer for the playoffs, an expert nut tapper to fight against Dylan Brooks and his nut tapping. Draymond Green is the OG ball puncher, so it wouldn't surprise me. But I do think just a lot of people are not even thinking of the possibility that Draymond could get traded. And if you think it's true, I think there will be a bit of a demand shock as people are caught off guard and people rush to go and buy him depending on where he is traded. So if Draymond is traded, I think the person who benefits the most from that is probably like maybe a Looney, maybe a Wiseman, but also like a Kuminga would be interesting to watch. So I guess if you think Draymond or Wiseman could get traded, buying a Wiseman isn't the worst hedge, because if Wiseman gets traded, he probably gets way more minutes. He probably becomes a cheat code instantly. And then if Draymond gets traded, that's their sign that they're punting. Wiseman potentially could get a bunch more minutes, them just punting games, tanking, and developing players. So the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, you know what, buying a James Wiseman is a pretty decent dart throw. Even after this news, maybe I would do that. So, all right. So I think we're caught up. Let me check Twitter, just make sure there's no additional news here. I know a lot is probably going to happen because the gates have almost certainly opened. I'm not seeing anything. Let's see. Yeah, just injuries and stuff. Cool. So, now that we're caught up, let's start going down this list. We are 30 minutes in. Like I said, I think this is going to be a multiple hour stream. There's just a lot I want to talk about. I think there's a lot of interesting information and a lot of potential plays right now, both for SoRare lineups and for like buying and flipping based on trade news. All right. So let's look at the buyers first. Now, this is in no particular order, but the first team I want to look at is the Miami Heat. So let's go ahead and pull them up. I think the Miami Heat are in an interesting situation. They're obviously not good enough to compete for a ring currently. They have had some injury problems. Some players haven't panned out to be as good as they hoped. And as a result, I think there's a big opportunity here personally. I think this is one of the plays that I'm the most excited about. And when we talk about it, I will tell you how much I own so we can be completely transparent here. So the Heat, as we can see, we have their lineup pulled up on SoRare data. I think the two players that the Heat are going to try to trade is Duncan Robinson, who is out for the season, has been just a complete bust since he signed that massive contract. He's basically an $80 million podcaster now. So him getting traded is not going to affect anything. He's already not playing. No team is going to add him hoping that they get to add and make a push for the playoffs. He's kind of just a salary dump type of thing. Maybe the Heat, a team would probably take him on if they got some picks in addition, and gave the Heat a player that the Heat thought they could youth to make a playoff push. The other player, however, that I think the Heat will trade is Kyle Lowry. Now, Kyle Lowry has been pretty disappointing for the Heat. We can kind of even see it in his pricing chart here. And let's go ahead and zoom out to the beginning of November. That's typically the date I use. I know the season started in October, but I try to eliminate these initial highs because I think it skews the rest of the graph. Like everyone at the very beginning sold for more than they're worth now because it was the first cards. Stan is saying he doesn't think that Duncan Robinson's out for the season. Interesting. Stan, do you think if a team traded for Robinson, would they expect anything for him? Do you think? Like, would they expect him to come back and play? And let's say the Lakers, who desperately need shooting, do you think that trade would make sense in the terms of he would actually come back and be even just playing? Because I have heard that he was out for the season, but I the Heat definitely better than I do, so it's totally possible. But anyways, I think Kyle Lowry is going to get traded. He's older. He has not proven to be the player that I think the Heat were hoping him to be. And the Heat have, they have good players that can kind of replace him. I know Lowry's had some pretty crazy games, like the one game where there was 7 players on the Heat roster that could play, and he put up a 70 or an 80 in SoRare. So it's not impossible that he doesn't do anything big, but I do think do anything big for a different team in terms of if you're trying to buy him at a cap of 20 with a price of $10 is not an insane dart throw to be Kyrie could go to a bad team and put up big numbers on a Russell Westbrook type of move. If Westbrook, and we'll get to the Lakers, obviously if Westbrook went to a bad team, he would suddenly probably be a bit of a usage monster. So I think Lowry has that potential on a much lesser scale. However, all right, Stan's saying he is out for a long time, but not the season. Could come back at the end in limited minutes and hit some threes. Interesting. Okay, so for the purposes of this, of SoRare, I think we should consider him out for the season, just because I don't think he's going to get a massive pump if he gets traded. And I don't think he's would be considered a cheat code because, to your point, Stan, if he got limited minutes, we probably don't want to be putting him in any lineups. But good to know. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. So if we think Lowry is on the move, if the Heat are kind of giving up on him and trying to include him in a package deal in terms of salary, so they can pick up a better player, package him with some picks. I think the person that benefits the most, and a player that has been performing very well lately, is Victor Oladipo. Victor Oladipo has struggled with injuries for a while. He was very, very good at one point when he was on the Pacers. And for the first time, it seems like he's kind of showing flashes of that again. An elite scorer, someone who can create his own shot, someone who could get valuable minutes playing for the Heat. So if Lowry's gone, I think Oladipo steps up, and he's a player. If the Heat want to make a serious playoff run, Oladipo has to be a player that performs at that high level. He has to take on additional responsibility if the Heat want a chance at winning a title here or making a playoff push. So personally, as you can see, if we take a look at the chart here, I bought, I believe, 2 commons and a rare of Oladipo. I think Oladipo is a very interesting play, and he's someone that I'm excited to kind of gamble on. If we take a look at his chart here, let's back it up to November. We take a look at his chart here. Actually, let's cut it off when he started playing the season. So that's 12-9. So let's go ahead and just throw on 12-12. All right. So here is Oladipo's chart once he started playing and he was being minted and auctioned off. And we can see that, he had a little bit of a bump here, but he has been trending downwards for a while. So I think picking up an Oladipo here who's been going down, like you're buying him close to the bottom, hopefully. And if someone like a Lowry gets traded, Oladipo takes a much bigger role. He's an explosive scorer who has a ceiling. If we look at his scores, we can see that he's shown that. He put up a 48 here. He's put up some mid, like level 30s. So it's not entirely possible for if he was given a bigger role that Oladipo doesn't really shine and start dropping some 40s, some 50s, maybe even like has a crazy game, throws up a 60 or something like that. I just think there are a lot of interesting plays with Victor Oladipo right now. And if Lowry gets traded, or you could even buy an Oladipo with somewhat of a safety. Like obviously you're hoping he doesn't get injured. That's the con. That's the risk you're taking with Oladipo because he is a bit injury prone. But the flip side of that is Lowry's a little older. Lowry's missed some games. Lowry can get injured or traded. So even if Lowry doesn't get traded, I think there are windows where Oladipo is a bit of a cheat code if he continues to stay healthy and make this progress that we've seen him do over the last month. He's been healthy and playing. So I'm pretty excited about Oladipo. Like I said, I bought 3 cards, including a rare of his. And I'm more of a limited guy. I think I officially now have enough cards to do a rare contender, but I've never done it before. Just clarification, I'm always going to be looking at the limiteds here, just because I think it presents a much better graph to read and discuss. And on top of that, the other one, I know I'm talking a lot about Oladipo, but very excited about him for another reason. As we saw, they didn't start minting his cards until like the beginning of December. So a typical player who's been playing the entire season without like really taking any time off or being injured has a mint count at around 850 now. And we know like a limited can be out of 5,000 max. So Lowry, I think, is at 840 off the top of my head. I didn't look when we pulled them up, but let's go ahead and take a peek here. Yeah, he's sitting at about 840. Meanwhile, Oladipo is sitting at under 400. So if this perfect storm happens that we're kind of thinking could happen, whether Lowry takes some games off, gets injured, gets traded, or whatever, there is a much higher chance that you see a supply shock because there are less than half the amount of Oladipos out there compared to a typical player who's played the entire season. So I like Oladipo for a lot of reasons. I think there's just a lot of outs here. He's on a team that is not going to punt away the season. They are going to be trying to make a push. He's going to get minutes. He's going to get opportunity. I love Victor Oladipo for the rest of the season for SoRare, especially coming up to this trade deadline. All right, that was a lot. That was a lot of heat talk. Shout out to Stan. Thanks for tuning in. The next team I want to talk about is the Lakers. The Lakers were next on my SoRare Steals video series, which I think I'm going to discontinue moving forward and just make videos week to week about upcoming steals because it makes sense now that the trade deadline's happening, the All-Star game is going to happen, and then the playoff push is going to start to happen. So the 2 players I think the Lakers are going to be selling is Russell Westbrook, obviously. Maybe they keep him because he's been playing very well, possible 6th man of the year. But also he has a huge salary. He has an expiring contract. For a team that's looking to tank, he might be worth picking up and just not allowing him to play, kind of like what happened with John Wall. And then I think the other player is Patrick Beverley. That's going to get traded. Personally, really quick with Patrick Beverley, I don't think Patrick Beverley is worth picking up in SoRare. I love Patrick Beverley. I think he's a great addition to any team, especially if they're going to make a playoff run. He brings a lot of heart and leadership and defense, but he also does a lot of things that don't make the box score. So he's not going to put up a high SoRare score. He might be a great player for your team, but Patrick Beverley is not a great player for your SoRare lineup, week to week, in my opinion. So whether the Lakers trade him or not, true, Neil Diamond Hands, the god of playing games, Patrick Beverley. But regardless, I don't think picking up a Patrick Beverley is good. If you have one, I would say hold him in case he does get traded, because you'll probably see that spike and you can sell him then. Russell Westbrook. I think there's a very good chance this man gets traded. And the thing with Russell Westbrook is, once again, similar to Oladipo, we have a lot of outs here. With Oladipo, with Russell Westbrook, if he gets traded, he almost certainly is going to get traded to a bad team. No good team out there is going to pick up Russell Westbrook to try and make a championship run here. That's just not going to happen. So as a result, if he gets traded, he's going to a bad team, and he is going to become a usage monster if he plays. Really quick, as you can see, I bought a Russell Westbrook, I believe, earlier today. Just for full transparency, you can kind of see it here as well too. But if Westbrook goes to another team, he is going to be a usage monster. This man is going to, if they allow him to play, he's going to start dropping 50, 60 point SoRare games, possibly. There is a small chance that Russell Westbrook is gone forever. He is getting older, but I personally am willing to take that bet that if he gets traded to a bad team, this man is going to go nuclear and start averaging a triple-double and putting up just video game numbers on a meaningless team, and probably not winning those games either. Because, I think a team that wants to lose can still have Russell Westbrook on their team and not have it drastically affect their winning percentage at this point in his career. So that's one out. The other out is the Lakers keep Russell Westbrook, who currently is on a tiny bit of a dip, but more importantly, is just not inflated right now. As you can see, he's typically been sitting at around 30-ish, and we're currently on a little bit of a dip here. Teeny bit of a recovery from that, so technically like 15-ish was like the lowest you could get him. We can get him for like $20. He's not sitting at his local peak or steady height. And if Westbrook stays with the Lakers, maybe he takes a small dip from some people who are buying him speculatively, but he's a player who will have windows of being a cheat code simply because LeBron and AD sit out every other game. AD could get injured and LeBron will start sitting out even more, and Westbrook will start and just be, once again, a usage monster. Westbrook, I don't know if he's good for a team for winning games, but he's damn good for a SoRare lineup if he is the main ball handler. So once again, I really like Russell Westbrook as a pickup because his value doesn't go completely, his card's not going to absolutely tank in price if he doesn't get traded, and if he does get traded, you're going to see it absolutely skyrocket, and he might even be worth holding as a cheat code. There's just a lot of outs here. So really, really, really like Russell Westbrook. I think there are a couple more players worth pointing out here. Austin Reeves and Lonnie Walker. I think they're both kind of in that same vein. They're about the same price. They're about the same cap. I know Lonnie Walker is back. I know Austin Rivers is about to be back. Either one of them have put up some solid SoRare games. If the Lakers trade away Westbrook and Beverly, those are two, especially if they trade away both, those are two guards. It just leaves more usage and minutes for these two guards to kind of take their place. And then really quick, Noam is saying, I assume bad teams have an incentive to tank or develop their young point guard, so my confidence Westbrook is questionable. I see him saying this a sixth man. Yeah, and I kind of agree with that. But I don't know. Teams are weird. Teams are dumb. Another man's trash and one man's trash and another man's treasure. Westbrook has a big ego. I don't know if he goes to a bad team that he allows, if he's willing to play off the bench. Even if he plays off the bench, he's going to be constantly trying to convince the coach to keep him in longer. He's going to be hogging the ball. Like I said, it's totally possible that a team straight up trades for him and like sits him. They're like, hey, you're not playing. Go home. Like the Rockets did with John Wall. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. And if that's the case, I mean, his card goes absolutely to the floor and I lose $20. But in my opinion, I think the risk is worth the reward here, from a lineup standpoint or from a selling a pump standpoint. But I think you're right. No, I think you're right. I think it's his future is very up in the air. Like, I truly couldn't predict what is going to happen with Russell Westbrook. You could really convince me of any situation. But yeah, like we said, Austin Reeves, Lonnie Walker are not two terrible dart throws, especially if Westbrook and Beverly get traded. Those are two guards that are leaving the Lakers. And yeah, they'll maybe get a point guard back because they need a point guard and they didn't get Kyrie. But that still, I think, leaves some sort of usage and minutes on the table, especially since the Lakers didn't get Kyrie, who is a usage monster. I think that makes it even a little more upside for Austin and Lonnie. And then Winning Gabriel, I also think, is an interesting play. He's sitting at $3. When you buy, I have 4 Winions. The whole point of having a Winion basically is, I mean, one, he's actually good. He can rebound, he can score, he can block. I really like him as a player, but more importantly, he's on a team with Anthony Davis. If Anthony Davis gets injured, there's a lot of minutes and usage up for grabs. And it seems like Winion is trusted enough by the Lakers to get a good chunk of those usage and minutes for certain games. I like him a bit. What about the Wizards? He took them to the playoffs. Yeah, and Stan, I don't know. See, like I said, I'm very up in the air because it's very possible he could become old Westbrook, or it's totally possible that Westbrook's gone forever. It's been 2 years. He is older. People know he can't shoot, so they stay off of him. I truly don't know. But the reason ultimately I'm buying him is just because I think there's a lot of interesting outs where he makes sense in a SoRare lineup or flipping on a huge pump because of a trade or something like that. But like I said, truly, you could not, like, you could convince me that anything could happen. You could convince me he gets traded to a bad team and takes them playoffs. You could convince me he gets traded to a bad team and sits the rest of the season, plays sixth man, starts and is a usage monster, or stays in the Lakers and has like windows of like going off when the Lakers like are tanking. He's truly one of the most interesting players in this trade deadline. But yeah, so that's the Lakers. The next team I want to talk about is the Denver Nuggets. I did do a SoRare Steals video on them. So if you haven't watched that, feel free to go check it out at some point, because we're going to kind of be brief with these guys, because I did say some stuff there. We have a lot of data to cover here. The only player I think the Nuggets are really probably going to trade are Bones Highland. If we take a look at Bones here, we can see that he's sitting at a floor of about 18. He's got a cap of 15, which is kind of interesting for a future lineup. We can see he's a bit on the downcline here, or a bit on the decline here. Before he was sitting at like 30 for a bit, and even then, this dip is a little higher than down here where we are currently. Partly just because it seems like the Nuggets don't love Bones Highland, and there are reports saying that it's not if he gets traded, it's a matter of when. But I mean, if Bones Highland gets traded, he's probably starting on a bad team. Maybe he's a young talent that is going to. He's a young talent that needs to be developed. And I think if a team picked him up, they kind of want to see where the ceiling is with him and where he fits into their future plans. So, if Bones doesn't get traded, I think he's someone you don't want to hold on to, but I think he's a really interesting buy right now if you think he's going to get traded, especially if you think he's going to get traded to a bad team, as the Nuggets try to add one more piece to make that championship run. I really think there's a chance we could see someone like Bones get traded to the Hornets. I think that kind of makes sense from the Hornets' perspective. And if so, I think he runs absolutely wild. And once again, could go up a lot in value. Even him hitting like 30, it seems very reasonable considering that's where he was for a bit. And it was pretty steady. But also, that team is going to want to, like I said, they want to see how good he is. They want to see how he plays with LaMelo if he got traded to Charlotte. So he could be an incredible cheat code immediately after the trade with this insanely low cap. So much so that like he's someone that I currently haven't bought one. As you can see, I don't own one besides his common, but I am definitely really considering going and scooping him before the trade deadline, just to have that flexibility. If the Nuggets go ahead and trade Bones Highland, we're assuming they're picking up a bigger piece. So I don't think there's a lot of, if anything, there's more usage that gets eaten up by these guys like Jokic, Murray, Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. are always all great players who are going to take up a lot of usage and minutes. And if they add another good player, that player is going to do the same. I do think it'd be interesting to watch Christian Brown or Bruce Brown. We're not going to pull them up because I don't think they're interesting enough to take a deep dive. And like I said, I kind of already covered that in the SoRare Steals video. But I think they're both kind of interesting players. They're sitting at similar prices. I mean, Christian Braun has a lower cap, but he's also lower on the depth chart. It seems like Bruce Brown gets a little more. Vladko Kankar is the other person I'm kind of interested in. I just kind of have a soft spot for Vladko. I think he's a very good player. And I think as players rest, the Nuggets rest as they prepare for a championship run. I think there are windows for him. But I don't think the Nuggets are super interesting in terms of what players they currently have that'll get a bump if they make a trade, because their trade is going to be adding just hopefully another usage monster. Zach, this is currently the ultimate NBA top shot, the ultimate top NBA trade deadline guide. Zach, I mean, you could use this information for the for Top Shot as well. While we're applying it to SoRare here, but the same principles apply. That like if you think this player is going to get traded and get a massive usage increase, or someone on a team's going to get traded and an existing bench player will get a massive bump in usage or minutes, I think if you believe in Top Shot, I think that's a bet that you might think is worth making. So you really, really apply the same information. We're talking SoRare right now because the marketplace is very reactive, and I just think there's a lot of opportunities, especially for buying and selling on the marketplace, or having some sick cheat codes to have in your pocket. All right. Next team on my list we have is the New Orleans Pelicans. So let's go ahead and pull them up here. I think the Pelicans are kind of in a similar boat to the Nuggets in the sense that they're not really there's really no one on their bench that's going to get this massive usage increase. If they do make a move, it's to add another big piece. So I'll really quickly say I think Jose Alvarado is a little interesting. $10 seems a little cheap for him. 20 cap's not crazy. I think he's interesting. I don't know if I would go and scoop him up. I currently don't own one, don't really plan to. And then Kira Lewis Jr. is a little interesting as well. He's also a point guard though. And I don't plan on picking him up, but if you want to take like a crazy dart throw, sure, why not? He's talented. I know the Pelicans know he's talented, and at some point we'll have to see how good he is. But like I said, the Pelicans are similar to the Nuggets in the sense that they have like absolute stud here. And even Valanciunas is a bit of a stud. Trey Murphy III is pretty big of a stud. Like these players, they have a very deep team that already are taking up a bunch of usage. The one player I think is interesting is Devontae Graham here. So let's go ahead and take a look at Devontae. I think Devontae's a shooter. He's kind of buried in the bench on the Pelicans, and he's probably one of those players that has a lot more value on a different team than the Pelicans. So the Pelicans might try and trade him. Let's cut this out so that way we can look at something a little more current here. There we go. I think the Pelicans could trade him to try and get another piece, and their teams. I always use the Lakers as an example because they desperately need shooting, but there are plenty of teams that want shooting and are willing to pay through the nose. Yeah, I think, Zach, I do think Herb Jones is a good chance he gets traded too. However, like I love Herb Jones, huge Herb Jones fan. But he's kind of similar in that vein to Beverly, where I think Herb Jones is more of an incredible player on a team, not necessarily an incredible player for a SoRare roster, because he's doing a lot of things, especially on defense, that don't make the box score. And that's all we really care about in SoRare and DFS. So I think you're right. I think Herb Jones, there's a good chance he gets traded. I kind of hope the Pelicans don't trade him just because I love him on the Pelicans. But I'm not particularly excited or think there's a lot of upside picking him up, unless you're trying to pick him up and flip him on the news and that pump. But Devontae Graham, I do think is interesting because I think he's shown some flashes of putting up a decently high SoRare score. But he's someone that gets buried on the bench more or less because the Pelicans are so deep. As you can see, he has this one very vertical spike here. I'm ashamed to say that I bought him at this price to squeeze him into a lineup. I think this is possibly besides Dante DiVincenzo, the only other time I've bought a player closer to the top than the bottom. But I really wanted to put him in a lineup. I don't think it ended up being worth it, unfortunately. But yeah, I think there's a chance that Devontae Graham gets sent to a team where he's allowed to shoot a lot more. He's in the starting lineup for a not so good team, and he just puts up meaningless high numbers, some good SoRare stats. If he gets traded, I think we see a pump. I think there's some opportunities, especially if he's on a team where he's absolutely buried on the bench, where he is considered a bit of a cheat code. Currently, his cap is 14, which is not terrible. I think like Bones Highland's a little more interesting. In terms of a cap around that, like Bones Highland at 15, I'll take over Devontae Graham. But also to buy Bones Highland, you're spending almost $20. While right now you can get Graham for $4 or his rare for 33. So it's not a terrible dart throw. But yeah, we're going to keep it short with the Pelicans. Once again, same as the Nuggets, where I just don't think there's a lot of opportunity for anyone that isn't one of their main guys. All right. I've got a couple more on this buy list, and then we'll move on to the sellers, which I think will be very exciting in its own way. But the Clippers are the next team I want to talk about. And the Clippers, I think, are in a very interesting position. Now, I did make a SoRare steal as the last SoRare steals I'll probably do on teams was about the Clippers. So I encourage you to go and check that out. We're not going to dive super deep into some of these guys as a result. But I think there are three guys here that are particularly interesting on the selling side of the Clippers, people they're going to trade away. Those three people are Robert Covington, Terrence Mann, and John Wall. So Terrence Mann, we talked about in SoRare steals. I just think, especially if he gets traded, he is a player that has high upside. When Kawhi and Paul George haven't played, he's put up some pretty solid SoRare numbers. He's been a bit of a cheat code multiple weeks. And if he gets traded to a bad team where he's constantly starting, or even a mediocre team, a team that's not trying to make a championship run, where he really gets to start, really stretch out his wings, kind of see where that ceiling is, I think he's a cheat code for multiple weeks in the future. I currently have one Terrence Mann that got as a reward, and I'm considering buying another because $10 is not a bad deal. Covington, I personally am not too excited about, but we could see a bit of a pump. Oh, real quick with Terrence Mann, I don't think it's, especially if he gets traded to a bad team, I don't think it's impossible that he starts to sit at like a $20 floor. He's, like I said, he's shown a ceiling. If he's on a bad team where he really gets to max out that ceiling and see where it's at, I think there's a lot of opportunities for him. So I really like Terrence Mann. There's a good chance I buy another. Robert Covington, like I said, not super excited about. Would be an interesting dart throw just because he is a player who can put up a decent score if he's not absolutely buried on the bench like he is with the Clippers. I know he struggled with a bit of injuries as well. So, yeah, we're not going to take a deep look at him. I don't think there's anything too interesting. But I think John Wall is interesting. Maybe not for the best reasons here. So, as you can see, I bought John Wall. Not at the top, thankfully, but definitely might end up regretting that purchase. And one of the reasons why, so John Wall got injured. Doesn't seem to be any timetable that he comes back. And there are reports that if the Clippers don't get a trade for John Wall, they might just straight up cut him. If they cut him, maybe he gets picked up by another team, maybe not. I really don't know. It's hard to know if teams that are making a championship push think getting John Wall is worth it. There's a world where I could see like the Heat trying to pick up John Wall. I'm trying to think who else. There's a world. I was going to say who else. There's a world where the Lakers try to pick up John Wall because they need a point guard. So it's not impossible that he isn't worth something. That he like. The main concern is, does John Wall play or is he out for the rest of the season, whether he wants to play or not. So like I said, I bought a John Wall, as you can see right here, for like $12. Personally, I think he's a pretty high risk, but he could be a high risk that really pays off. I do think if he comes back, like let's say he goes to the Lakers, which seems like that's not impossible. I think the Lakers were trying to get him before the season started. Like we can see him hitting 18 here. We can see him hitting 20 here. And you can see these aren't like these crazy pumps. These are like a potential for like a sustainable floor if John Wall really comes back and is playing consistently on a team that allows him. So I don't know if I would buy a John Wall right now. I think if you're going to spend the $8, you might as well spend a little more and buy a Terrence Mann. He's the player I like the most by far. But really quick, the players that are a little interesting, if they trade away Mann and they trade away Covington, I think Moses Brown is a little interesting. He's very low price, pretty low cap. He doesn't typically play, so it is a dart throw, but it's a very cheap dart throw. I think Amir Coffey is the same way. We've seen Coffey play a couple games here and there. So if Terrence Mann gets traded away, maybe there's more opportunities for Coffey to play. And he's had a couple of pretty decent games. If we take a look here real quick, I do own two of them. I bought them down here for transparency. But when he has played, like he just put up a 29 recently, put up a 17. There's a reason he has an 11 cap. When he does get the opportunity, he's not wasting it completely. So I don't know. I kind of like Coffey and Brandon Boston and Moses Brown. I think these are all like kind of decent dart throws that are pretty dirt cheap. And then Reggie Jackson could be interesting, if they trade away Mann and they get rid of Wall. Just once again, like we said, those are two guards that are gone. So there's got to be at least one guard that gets benefit from that. And I think in this case, it'd be Reggie Jackson. Although the Clippers might be trying to trade for a guard. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what the Clippers do. I think they're a bit of an anomaly this trade deadline because they're in a very unique situation. All right. On to the next team, and that is the Milwaukee Bucks. This is going to be short and sweet. I think really the only player that they might be trying to trade away is Grayson Allen. He has a pretty high cap right now and a price at $10. There's a lot of other players I'm a lot more interested in at $10. So personally, I'm not picking up a Grayson Allen. I think he's almost overpriced here. He doesn't excite me as a possible cheat code or as a possible pump. If he pumps during a trade, it's a flash in the pan. I'm staying away from Grayson Allen. However, Grayson Allen gets traded. I think someone who we've all kind of liked and who has seemed to get some more minutes as he kind of gets his feet under him is Joe Ingles. Now, Joe Ingles is sitting, I believe, in basically an all-time low, partly because he was injured for a while. So let's see. I'm going to start at December. Let's see. That might even, yeah. He didn't really even start playing till the 18th. Let's go. Let's start on the 19th here. So this is when they started minting Joe Ingles because he was finally healthy enough to play. And as we can see at the beginning, he was all the way up to like $15, but now he's currently at an all-time low as circulation of his has gotten a lot higher. He's still at 300, which is pretty low. When we were talking about Oladipo, he was almost at 400, and I really like that number. I think 300 is excellent. And if Grayson Allen gets traded, the Bucks do need more shooting, so theoretically they would pick up more shooting. But Ingles is a good defender who can get some steals. He's a great shooter who, if he's hot, especially can put up a ceiling game. And as he gets healthy and plays more minutes, I think he's a very interesting dart throw to have. So I don't own a Joe Ingles. I'm not rushing out to get one. Even if Grayson Allen gets traded, I'm not rushing out to get a Joe Ingles. But this is a player I'm watching and a player I'll be very interested as we approach the playoffs for sure. Let me take a drink. We're an hour in. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for everyone who's hanging out in the chat. It makes it a lot more enjoyable to not be just talking to myself. And I hope you're I hope you're getting some sort of value out of this because I've been writing a lot and crunching a lot of depth charts and price charts here. So I just wanted to kind of share it all and think out loud and discuss what I've been buying and all that. All right. The next team we have that is potentially a buyer, is the Celtics. So I did do a SoRare steals about these guys. So we're not going to dive super deep because of that. But also the Celtics are a team that don't really have to make a move. They're the best team arguably in the NBA. They're very deep. And when they're healthy, there's an argument that they're going to win a ring if they're fully healthy. So they don't have to make a move. However, if they do trade, I think the one player there's rumors that, if they were to trade a player, that player would probably be Peyton Pritchard. I think Peyton Pritchard is a very interesting pickup if he gets traded. Sitting at like $5-6, that's a decent dart throw that you're not breaking the bank for. 13 cap seems a little high, but if he gets traded, there's a possibility that he's outperforming that pretty consistently, especially if he's traded to a bad team where he's not buried on the bench like he is with the Celtics when they're all healthy. But yeah, I think Peyton Pritchard's an interesting dart throw. We'll kind of leave it at that. We can really quick look at his price chart. Just because I do find his price chart very interesting, because whenever injuries happen, like with Smart or Derek White or Brogdon or any of these guys, we can see he has some verticality here. You can see way back in November, I bought him and flipped him for a very small profit. And we can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different instances of him going pretty vertical here. And so, let's say he stays on the Celtics. I think there's opportunities where he'll pump and he'll be a bit of a cheat code too. So if you pick up Pritchard hoping he gets traded and he doesn't, it's not the end of the world. If you're just patient, he will prove to have some value at some point. Now, if he does get traded, I think the two players that kind of benefit the most are Malcolm Brogdon, who is already their sixth man. But, if they trade for a big, which is where they're kind of a little stretched thin, and they trade away a guard, then that just leaves a little more time for Brogdon and for Derek White to get some extra minutes, to get some extra usage, some extra shots, all that. So those are the two guys that I would be interested in scooping up. If I think Peyton Pritchard's getting traded, I don't think either of these guys really pump, but they might be worth scooping up and playing in a lineup before people decide that I want to target these guys now. Personally, on my list here that I'm looking at, Peyton Pritchard's the guy that I have highlighted as the most interesting buy and the one that I would try to scoop up. I wouldn't be going out and buying a Brogdon or a Derek White if you don't already have them. If you're just hoping that they pump, I think Peyton Pritchard is the most interesting by far. All right, next team we're going to look at is the Philadelphia 76ers. Philadelphia 76ers are definitely a buying team. They're kind of the dark horse right now to make a championship run. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the 76ers and how good they are. And the big player that the 76ers are going to be probably trading away is Matisse Thybulle. Now, Matisse Thybulle is a very interesting situation because you could really argue you could convince me that he's not worth picking up because he kind of fits in that Herb Jones, Patrick Beverley bucket where, super great to have on your team as a defensive specialist, but maybe it doesn't exactly translate to the SoRare score. And on top of that, in this case, Matisse Thybulle is like buried on the bench by Doc Rivers. He gets, 10 minutes a game, if that. 12. So I could have just looked. He gets around 12 minutes a game, and I think that number is still kind of going down. However, let's zoom out a little bit. Go to November. Look at a couple months here. Let's take this chunk. That seems a pretty decent representation. Yeah. So here's the thing. Awful. He can't shoot. But on the flip side, very good defender who can get steals and blocks. And to his credit, he moves very good off ball. Oh, shoot. I'm having internet problems. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. But he moves very well off ball. He gets open dunks. He gets open threes that he misses, like you're saying, Stan. But he gets open opportunities. So Thybulle's a piece that I think the 76ers move as they try to get better and be built for a championship. But, if he goes to a bad team and he gets more minutes, I think he's an interesting play. Cap of 10 is pretty. You can squeeze him into a lot of lineups as kind of a guy that you're hoping overperforms. He's not going to be one of your studs. And if he gets more minutes, this man's going to get more steals and more blocks and stuff like that. He is a guy that could overperform on SoRare by getting shooting 2 for 10 because he's got 3 blocks and 3 steals. That's the type of player he is. I think he's interesting. I don't own one. I don't plan to buy one. I think he's just worth pointing out because he most likely, if the 76ers make a trade, he's almost for sure getting traded. And if he is traded to a bad team, very good chance he gets a massive increase in minutes and usage. And so maybe he's worth a dart throw. Personally, I'm not picking him up, but yeah. I don't think there's anyone on the 76ers that are going to get that are worth looking at, that are going to get an increase in usage. They already have the usage monsters that are James Harden, Joel Embiid, and Maxey, and even Harris is there and Melton to scoop up the leftovers. So I couldn't recommend anyone that is going to get an increase in minutes or usage on that team. So very quick there. All right. And then the last team that I have on my buy list, the teams that are trying to improve their team and add a guy that's probably going to take up minutes and usage, are the Memphis Grizzlies. There's rumors that the Memphis Grizzlies and the New Orleans Pelicans are low-key in a bidding war for OG Anunoby right now. I think the Warriors, if they added a 3-and-D wing, could just take their team to the next level. So I don't think it's impossible that they make a big move here. I think once again, there's a short list of teams that needed to make a big move if they wanted a chance at a ring. I don't think the Warriors are going to do it now. I think the Mavs just made their move. I think the Nuggets and the Grizzlies and the Pelicans are probably still looking to possibly make that move. Maybe not the Pelicans, depending upon Zion's health. We'll see. So if the Grizzlies are a very interesting situation here, and this is the only team on the buy list that I have where I think a player on their team could be listed. They could trade him away, or he could get a bump in usage of minutes based on a trade. So I think then this is very speculative. The only player that's really been rumored to be traded is Zaire Williams. He seems to be in the conversation for a lot of trades. And Zaire has kind of had some health problems. So I think that's one reason why the Grizzlies would trade him is like, look, you're not helping us now. We're trying to win now. And as we can see, I think I got him as a reward. And I went ahead and flipped him somewhat quickly. But we can kind of see, besides this like little bump here, because Ja was sitting out, or Desmond and Ja were sitting out, he's kind of been on this downward trajectory the entire time. And now you can get him for $5. So he's not, he's averaging 20 minutes per game and it only has a cap of 10. So I don't love Zaire if he stays on the Grizzlies, but I think there's a good chance he gets traded as the Grizzlies try to improve and make that playoff run. And if that's the case, I think he goes to a bad team. I could see him once again on the Hornets. I don't think I think that's pretty reasonable. Or he could go to a good team that desperately needs shooting as well. But if he goes to a bad team, once again, he's young. They're going to want to see his ceiling. They're going to want to get him more minutes. So he would drastically get an increase in usage and minutes, most likely. I think he's a really interesting dart throw. I like him a lot as a player, which is a bonus. Like some of these dart throws that I talk about, I don't even like as a player, but I just think there's a lot of upside there. Zaire, I actually really like as a player. I think he has a lot of potential. I think he's very good if he can stay healthy. So I think he's worth picking up. And like I said, $6 for a dart throw, not terrible. And then if we look at the rest of the Grizzlies, I think Dylan Brooks could get traded. Personally, I would not touch him. I don't really like Dylan Brooks. I don't think he has a lot of upside. I think to his credit, he kind of fits in that basket that we've been talking about with Herb Jones and Patrick Beverley and Draymond Green. And I can't remember who the last guy is. But someone that like can be a good asset for your team, but that doesn't necessarily translate to the box score. And box score is what matters in SoRare, especially like in terms of hitting it big with a moonshot if a player performs. And this cap is not super exciting either. Like if his cap was like 10, there's a little upside there for him outperforming. But yeah, I don't love Dylan Brooks at all, but I think he could get traded. I think there's a outside chance that we see someone like Brandon Clark get traded. I don't think that's going to happen, but outside chance, maybe Steven Adams gets traded. He's supposed to be back soon, but he's a little older. Maybe they reassess and they realize that he's a long ways out and they need to win now. But I do think Steven Adams would be a good piece for a playoff run. So I don't think they'd trade him either. The one player that I'm very interested in, and this might be because it's a bit of my he's a bit of my bag. I own quite a few of him, is Kennedy Chandler. Now, right away, we're going to look at Kennedy Chandler's price graph here. We're going to see me just buying him at the wrong times. I believe I own 4 or 5 of him, and as you can see, he is just I'm down astronomically. with Kennedy Chandler. Yeah, I own 4 of these, and I bought them all for sure above like $2. I think this might have been the lowest buy I bought. Yeah, $3. So take this with a grain of salt. Once again, just want to be very transparent here. But one, Kennedy Chandler is sitting at $1. I mean, there's not a lot of players there with any type of upside that are sitting at $1, which I think is interesting. If we take a look at his SoRare scores, we can see, doesn't get a lot of playing time because he's absolutely buried on the bench, but he has put up a 24, 28. And getting a player that has that capability for $1 seems like a pretty big W. Once again, not financial advice. Once again, I own multiple of these guys, so can't stress that enough. But I think Kennedy Chandler is a very young player. He's a rookie this year. I think there are teams that would be interested in picking him up as an asset, similar to getting a pick. Like I said, he's shown some flashes of having some sort of upside, some sort of interesting ceiling. And he's one of those players that I could truly see him getting traded to a bad team and getting a lot more opportunity, or them trading Zaire or someone else and him also getting more opportunity by staying on the Grizzlies, because we've seen Ja take a lot of games off. We've seen Desmond Bane take some games off. So if you're taking away Zaire, that's just another guard gone. And if Desmond and Ja are sitting, that's 3 guards, 1 traded, 2 sitting, and someone like Kennedy Chandler is going to get more windows of opportunity, or he's a bit of a cheat code. I mean, he has a cap of 5, that can put up 25 for $1. I think that is personally a great play. Obviously I do, because I bought him higher than that. But I think there's just windows of opportunity for Kennedy Chandler where, like I said, he could get traded, have some more usage, or he stays on the team. They make a big move for a big man or a wing, probably a 3-and-D wing, which would lower their depth at guard, and as a result, maybe he gets a couple more shots there. So I don't know if you should buy one right now, but I definitely think he's worth watching regardless. And then the other guy that's interesting is David Roddy. He's a power forward. I don't think there's going to be a lot of he's interesting. So the reason why he's on my list of a player that they would keep who could get some additional upside, and as you can see, I bought one down here for about the price he's sitting at now. He hasn't moved too much. But the reason why I think Roddy is interesting is if a Clark or a Steven Adams gets traded, like Steven Adams probably in the case of salary. But if either of those guys gets traded, the reason I would assume the reasoning why Memphis would be okay with that is because they say, hey, we have Roddy sitting at power forward and he's shown some real promise. We want to give him a bigger role on this team and use these other assets we have to shore up our weaknesses. So I think Roddy is also a very interesting dart throw. Sitting at $3, that's a pretty decent deal. Cap of 11, very interesting. So, I mean, as a whole, the Grizzlies are very young. Excuse me. As a whole, the Grizzlies are very young. Like I said, they have a lot of very good players. They have a deep bench. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think for sure they're going to make a trade. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for potential players that they're going to trade, as well as some younger players that will probably get more of a window of opportunity as a result. All right, so those are the teams for the buys. If you have any questions about those, feel free to drop them in the chat below. But I think we're going to move on to teams that we know are selling, and I think these are going to be a lot more fun. With buying teams, we're kind of typically going to be betting on the players that they're trading away, which is a little more up in the air because, a team that's really good could pick up, like, for example, let's say the Grizzlies make a trade with a very good team in the East, and they include Roddy as kind of an asset, well, he's probably getting buried on the bench still. So it's a little more uncertain. However, I think with the sellers, these teams that are selling, it's the opposite. The guys on the bench are going to benefit most as they trade away some of these big pieces. So let's go ahead and look at it from that aspect. And the first team I want to talk about that I've probably hammered by far the most on SoRare, I think I have the most cards from the Spurs than any other team. I think they're just ripe for opportunity because before the season even began, they were like, they planted their flag and they're like, we are tanking this year. We are entering the Wembanyama sweepstakes. There is no chance that we want to win. And they pretty much were like, hey, Jakob Poeltl, we are going to trade him like very early on. So the two players I have on the selling side that I think the Spurs might ship off are Jakob Poeltl and Doug McDermott. Where's Dougie? Where's Doug? There he is. So real quickly, Doug McDermott, I mean, he's got a whatever cap, 15 is not super exciting when he's a player that doesn't have an incredibly high ceiling necessarily. But sitting at $5, not the worst dart throw. He's a player that he's a small forward that can shoot, 3-and-D type of guy. And I don't know, maybe he's worth taking a shot at. I do own one or two of him. But that's just more of he's someone I bought early kind of as a dart throw myself. So we're not going to talk about Doug McDermott. If you think he's worth adding, like, more power to you. The first guy we're going to talk about, though, is Jakob Poeltl. For the record, I own 4 Jakob Poeltls. As I shown at the beginning of the stream, I have 3 of them already listed in case he does get traded. Because I'm I've been very high on Jakob Poeltl since the beginning of the season. As you can see, I've bought, let's go back a little more then. I feel like I thought I definitely sold a Jakob Poeltl. I guess it's not showing up. All right, whatever. That's weird. I swear I sold one. Oh, whatever. As you can see, I bought 4 Jakob Poeltls, all around the same price here. So I ended up playing him in lineups instead of selling me spikes because ultimately I was kind of waiting for him to be traded. That's kind of always been my strategy. Buying and it's just like, okay, buy him, play him in lineups and win some rewards because he's a great play overall. And then when the trade deadline comes around is when you're going to flip most of him and maybe keep one because he's still a very good player. As you can see right now, his floor is at $15. It's not bad. That's a pretty good deal. It's lower than it's sitting about what I've paid for him on my low end. I know he's dipped to like 13 at times. But I think $15 is a great entry point still. He's got a cap of 26. I think that's going to dip a little bit more in the coming weeks, which is also exciting. The one thing with the Jakob Poeltl I will say is there's a very good chance he gets traded to a team and his usage goes down as he plays more of a role instead of being one of the key players on a team. He could go from being like right now, I think he's kind of the 1B or the 1A with Keldon Johnson with Vassell being injured. But I think that he could go from being like that tier to like a number 3 or a number 4 guy, maybe even kind of like a Valanciunas guy who's just there to clean up, get rebounds, play defense, clog the paint, stuff like that. I don't think they're going to be looking for Jakob Poeltl to take over a game and put up some crazy SoRare score. So, like I showed you before, I already have a bunch of mine listed in case he does get traded and pumps. We can see a little bit of a verticality here as people, I think, are kind of expecting him to get traded like we have all season. So we'll just end it there. I think he's an interesting player to have. I personally have been very high on him for the entire season. But now let's go to the players that will benefit from Jakob Poeltl being traded that are more interesting. And those players are Jeremy Sohan, who should be coming back off a minor injury. He's a player who somehow keeps like a very low cap. He's kind of the perfect SoRare player in the sense that, he'll put up a monster like 50, 16 point game, and then he'll put up like a 1 or a 15 or something like that. So his cap remarkably stays low. So you can almost fit him into a lineup just every week, which is kind of awesome. But he is a little bit on the expensive side because he's a rookie, and he's a rookie that people are a little more excited about. So I think keep that in mind. I really like him, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend you rush out and like scoop him up like right this instant. But I like Jeremy Sohan, and I think if Jakob Poeltl goes out, Jeremy Sohan gets a decent bump in usage and minutes, especially as the Spurs are probably a little more comfortable playing him, knowing that with Jakob Poeltl out, it's even easier for them to lose games. So there's that. But the one player I think is the most pivotal player I've talked a lot about in the on Shot Tank streams, in the Team Hold Discord. Kind of one of the players I've planted my flag on. Well, it's funny because I planted my flag on Jakob Poeltl and his understudy, which is Zach Collins. As you can see here, Zach Collins I've bought up at around, I think I bought most of them around $8. I think these are all, if we zoomed in on this would be all like multiple buys. Maybe not. I don't completely know how that works. But as you can see, I already sold one pump of Zach Collins here. And I currently own one. I wouldn't be opposed to buying another or two because I really like Zach Collins' upside here. I think he's a player that he's already played well. Like if we go ahead and look at his scores here, 35, 37, 37, high 20s. And this is being the backup. Like I think he started maybe one or two of these games, maybe. Let's take a look. Like this is a 35 in 21 minutes. That's pretty incredible. And as you can see, it's a blowout, so he probably got a little more run. But he's putting these numbers up as a backup, and if Jakob Poeltl gets traded, he becomes the starter. I think he becomes an instant like cheat code on SoRare. I think he's an absolute smash. I'm very high on Zach Collins within the game of SoRare. I wouldn't say necessarily for, like Top Shot, like Zach was talking about earlier. But Zach Collins, I cannot say enough about how excited I am for him on SoRare, especially if Jakob Poeltl gets traded. And then the other two players I think that are a little interesting is Isaiah Roby. Where is he? Isaiah Roby, who we're not going to take a deep dive into, but he's sitting at $5. He's kind of slowly creeped up a little bit. I think I picked up two of him at around $2-ish. And he's just slowly continued to move up a little bit here and there. But he's someone that definitely benefits from Jakob Poeltl getting traded as he kind of just moves up the depth chart a little bit, probably gets a little more run as the Spurs continue to tank and explore their young talent. So I like him, especially at such a low cap. Excuse me. And then the last guy I kind of like is not Josh Primo. Well, there's two guys. Josh Richardson thinks a little interesting as things move on. I do think his cap's a little high right now. I do think his price is a little bit high. So he's someone that I would watch. And then the last player is Branham, which kind of already has been used lately as a cheat code. I know that Zakarian already owns one. I think there's someone else, I can't remember, in the Team Hold SoRare channel that was using him with great success. But he's a player, once again, that I think will get a little more run. If Doug McDermott gets traded, he kind of moves up in the depth chart. He's a younger player. They kind of want to see what he's got. I wouldn't necessarily buy him at $13 right now, but he's a player that I would watch. And 100%, I plan to pick him up at some point. So there's that. All right. So that's the Spurs. The next team on my list that we want to talk about is the Utah Jazz. And now the Utah Jazz are probably the most fun and interesting team by far here. We all know that Danny Ainge is the asset picks like God. The man is going to accumulate as many first-round picks as humanly possible. And he somehow got an insane amount already and is trying to probably add more. I do think they're going to keep like Lauri Markkanen, but I feel like most of their players, besides Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, are kind of like, if the price is right, they'll ship them off immediately. So I think Mike Conley is for sure going to get traded. I don't think they're going to get anything special for him. He's definitely not worth picking up, in my opinion. I'm just not very high on Conley. Malik Beasley could get traded. I think they're looking for a first round for him. I think he's 26, if I remember off the top of my head. Yeah, he's 26. There's some upside with Malik Beasley, I guess, if he gets traded, but I'm not really looking at him. I think Kelly Olynyk will for sure get traded. Once again, not super excited about him. With all these guys that we're running through right now, they could get a small pump once they get traded, and you could sell that. So, if you have any of these guys, definitely probably hold them until after. But I'm not particularly excited on the trading side of things. Jared Vanderbilt is the one exception. There's reports, I think, that they're looking for at least one first-round pick for Vanderbilt. I think he's a very good player. He does kind of get into foul trouble a bit, but he's young. I think he has a long way to go. I really like Jared Vanderbilt. 21 caps, all right. Sitting at $11 is not terrible. Let's actually take a look at his price graph real quick and see what we're thinking. Yeah, he's, as you can see, he's on a bit of a dip here. He was sitting at 20 before. So this might be the window to go and scoop one, especially if he gets traded. He probably will be a starter on whatever team. Once again, I don't know why, but I just keep thinking all these young guys are going to go to the Charlotte Hornets. I don't think in this case, because the Jazz want picks. But I guess this would be an example of a guy that could maybe go to the Celtics. He would be a great fit there. They need a forward that has his capabilities. And if he does, there's, maybe he doesn't start, but there's a lot of windows with that team for him to get starting positions and get fluctuating, like very high usage opportunities and not so high usage opportunities, which is good for his cap. So I really like Vanderbilt a lot for he's a lot of different outs, I think. And then I think Clarkson and Sexton are also interesting. I really like Clarkson for SoRare, especially if you have like a all offensive lineup you have to throw together. I think he's an ideal player to have because it's kind of all he is. And a fighting machine. He's a monster when it's time to throw up the throw up the hands. But I think at a cap of 32, he's not terrible. Price of 15, I think that's a really good deal for Clarkson. The one caveat would be, he gets traded to a team that's looking for scoring, and he goes from being kind of the number one guy, especially when the Jazz are trying to lose or people are injured, to being like a 3 or a 4 on a competing team. So I currently own a Clarkson. I wouldn't rush out and buy one. I think he's kind of worth watching, especially if he stays with the Jazz. I think he's one of those players that, if the price is right, the Jazz will trade him, but otherwise they'll probably try to extend him. And then finally, we have Colin Sexton, who I think will probably get traded and could be a little interesting. I don't know. He's $10 is an all right price. I don't know how I feel about that. But there's 3 guys that the Jazz will probably be keeping that I'm really excited about as the Jazz really go all out for Wembanyama. Number 1 being Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's currently sitting at $3, which is a great price for a dart throw. And if we look we can see at one point he was up to 22, probably because I believe he was starting at some point. Sorry, still recovering from being sick a little. We're almost at 2 hours of me just rambling, so starting to slow down a bit. But I think I think Alexander Walker is a really good dart throw, especially if the Jazz are really selling off everything that they can. I think he'll get way more minutes, way more usage. He's a player that, if we look at his scores, he's put up some 30s, he's put up some high 20s. Like, he's put up some pretty good scores for a guy who has a cap of 13. So I think he's one of those players that becomes just an instant cheat code if the Jazz sell everything. If they sell the farm, Nicole Alexander-Walker benefits a lot, because they're just going to be like, hey, go in there, shoot. We don't want you to win, so feel free to do whatever you want. If he gets the green light, I mean, it's not impossible that the man puts up like a 40-point SoRare game. So I really like him. I actually don't own any of him, and I need to fix that. I know Ransom Reed has been telling me to buy him for a while, and I just haven't gotten around to it. So he's someone I'll probably pick up after the stream and make sure I have a couple of him. The next player on my list that I'm probably the most excited about is Ochai here. My apologies in advance if I've butchered his name. But I think he has a lot of upside. If we look at his price chart here, we can see that he's had some major spikes going up all the way to $15. Oh, thanks. Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. I know I'm rambling a lot, but like I said, it's there's a lot of information. I think if you're really into SoRare, this is like a really fun, unique time to really dive into all this. And because it's the first trade deadline that NBA SoRare has ever experienced, I think there's just a lot of opportunity here. So, you know me, I'm in the marketplace buying and selling, and I just thought people would probably appreciate this, and I just couldn't fit it into a video. As you can see, we're almost 2 hours in, and we haven't got into the teams that I think are on the fence yet. But anyways, I think Ochai is like such an interesting play. If we look at, and the reason why is if we look at his scores here, once again, just like Nicole Alexander-Walker, when he's given opportunities to play, he can put up a decent SoRare score. Like a 26, a 23, a 19 when he has a cap of 11. And I think this 26 is about to get cut out, which means that cap's going to drop probably below 10. And at one point, like we said, he was sitting at, I think, like $15. So let's double check here. Yeah, he peaked at like $15, and he's kind of on the downswing here. And once again, he's always played when Lauri Markkanen and other players are taking time off. If the Jazz really sell the farm, and even if they keep Lauri Markkanen, like if they trade away Olnick, like Ochai is getting run because they want to see his ceiling. They want to develop him. He's a rookie. He's an exciting rookie. It's like him and Walker Kessler are going to get that run. And I think, I think he's a very exciting play. And then the last guy I'm a little less excited about that's a dart throw is THT here. Now, part of the reason why is I think there's a chance that the Jazz could include him in a trade. I mean, and it's possible Nicole Alexander-Walker is too, but I don't necessarily see that. I feel like THT could get included in a trade, however. His cap's a little higher. His price is a little higher. So I'm not as high on him as the other two. But once again, I think he's an incredible dart throw in the case that he does stay with the Jazz and they sell it all. He's a great offensive player who can hit a relatively interesting ceiling. We can see this year, even more so than the other two, 31, 31, 34, 38. So if any, while I'm not as high on him, I think just because people kind of see that ceiling a little more with this price. Although even though maybe they don't. What was the price? Oh, okay. I was looking at his 3-day average. That's why I got confused. I thought he was $8. But yeah, $4. I guess I'm actually I put him right on the same level as the other two. At $4, you're basically paying the same price that you would for these other two guys that you're hoping, hey, if the Jazz lose everyone, THT is going to get a lot more run. He's going to put up higher scores. He's going to be an instant cheat code for a couple game weeks at least, as the Jazz kind of figure out their new depth chart and their new rotations. And then the last guy, I think he's worth mentioning, but I'm not rushing out to buy him, is Walker Kessler. And that's just because, people discovered him already. He already was a cheat code recently. We'll pull him up just to look at his price chart to kind of emphasize that. We can kind of see he just had this run where people were paying, I think like over $30 for him. And even here recently, he's had another pump. So as a result, so I think Walker Kessler, you should be watching for sure. You should put him on your watch list because hope if enough. I don't know. It's tough because the trade deadline's so soon. They're definitely not going to trade him, and he will probably get way more minutes and starting time. I don't think I'm going to go and buy him because that price tag is just a little steep for not him being guaranteed any minutes, or I'm not sure how the rotation will work with probably Laurie staying behind. I don't think they trade Laurie Markkinen because they feel like they got something special with him. But that cap is high. So paying $25 for a player that I probably couldn't justify throwing into a lineup just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm probably going to leave him on the table, but he is someone that'll be interesting to watch once I assume the Jazz really trade away the kid and caboodle. All right. Another team that should absolutely be blowing their team up. And if they don't, they're truly, I don't even know what to say. If they should blow this team up. Star Fisker says, amazing show you're putting on. So helpful for someone who doesn't know a lot about the NBA. You deserve a lot more likes. Sent you a nah. Oh, thanks, Star. I appreciate it. Wow. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is a long stream. I kind of just made this so people could watch this back later. I don't expect everyone on their Sunday afternoon to drop everything and come and watch. But, if you're interested in just diving into a real deep dive into the NBA before the trade deadline, where you could take some dart throws and hopefully sell off some players that get traded, that's hopefully this video. So appreciate you and appreciate anyone that is watching later on as well. Thanks for tuning in. All right. So we're here to talk about the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Chicago Bulls are an awful team. They should absolutely blow it up. It is just side rant here. It is laughable that DeMar DeRozan is considered a guard and is on the All-Star team. What a joke. The team is struggling. He's been a forward pretty much his whole career. And Darius Garland and Jalen Brunson are better than him. And their teams are performing better than them. But whatever. Rant over there. Anyway, Chicago Bulls are a mess. They should be completely blowing this team up. They have completely failed. They have absolutely been made the laughingstock of the NBA in the sense that it turns out the Orlando Magic just absolutely have fleeced them with the Vujacic trade. The Bulls, there's a lot of Bulls slander out there right now, and they kind of deserve it. Their front office really needs to get things together and really kind of needs to do a factory reset of this team. I cannot stress this enough. This team is going nowhere. It's a couple of big name players who are paid way more than they're worth and are not ever going to win you anything. And then a bunch of just uninspiring underperforming bench players. All right. So if the Chicago Bulls blow it up, maybe they have to keep DeRozan. Maybe they're stuck with him. I haven't heard a lot of trade talk around DeRozan, so I'm just assuming that based on his contract or based on what a team needs, he's not going to get traded. More that he's stuck with the Bulls, not that they want to keep him. But so we're not going to dive deep into DeRozan. If I will say, if the Bulls go ahead and blow it up and they keep DeRozan, this man will probably just become an absolute usage monster, putting up garbage, worthless stats that are super great for SoRare, but don't mean anything in terms of winning games or performing in the NBA. So if you want to attack it from that angle, DeRozan is an expensive dart throw where you could just be like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to drop a 70 on SoRare because he has no one on his team and they want to tank. So they're going to let him do whatever he wants. So yeah, I think I would not buy DeMar DeRozan. I don't like DeMar DeRozan. But I think that angle is an interesting approach. So if you really like the idea of if you want to bet on the fact that the Bulls are going to blow it up but are going to be stuck with DeRozan, maybe you go and pick him up then. That's the only approach I could see. Zach LaVine, I don't really want anything to do with him. However, it might be similar in the sense that they trade him. I can't imagine them trading him to a very good team, maybe like a mediocre team they trade him to for picks or whatever. But there is a world where he gets traded to a team where, once again, his usage goes up pretty significantly. Personally, I would stay away from LaVine. Unlike DeRozan, who I feel like is a better gamble. LaVine is too much of a wild card. I truly do not know what is going to happen with him. So I would buy a DeRozan before I buy a LaVine. Let's just put it that way. And then Vujovic, I don't know what's going to happen with him. I actually really like Vujovic. I do have a Vujovic that I want as a reward and haven't sold because I think he's kind of a usage machine who, doesn't win you games but puts up really great SoRare scores against bad teams. He's a guy that just kind of eats. So I really like Vujovic. Let's actually take a look at him real quick. I think whether he gets traded or whether the Bulls keep him, I think there's a path where he is a great SoRare play regardless. As you can see, he's been pretty flat, but let's get rid of that upper sale. Yeah, so I mean, this is a guy that you're buying because you're hoping for that usage increase if LaVine gets traded. So, let's say, or I mean, maybe he gets traded to a bad team. I don't necessarily think anyone would want him. I don't know. I like having Vujovic because I think there's a path where he gets traded to a bad team, increase usage, increase minutes, or the Bulls keep him and they trade Zach LaVine and he gets increased usage of minutes because of LaVine being gone. So I really like Vujovic. As you can see, I own one and I've never even considered selling him. I really like him as a interesting play. He's even been my MVP in some champion lineups. So yeah, that's about all with that. The one player I think that's very interesting and maybe a little less interesting because I kind of assumed this guy was going to go to the Golden State Warriors, and maybe now that won't happen now that Curry is likely out for the season. But that's Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso kind of fits into that Herb Jones, Patrick Beverley, Draymond Green type of guy who's, an incredible player for a team, incredible defender, but he's doing a lot of things that don't make the box score. And as a result, maybe not the best SoRare play. However, I do think this is a guy that could really moonshot if he got traded. As you can see, I currently don't own one. I bought one at 10, sold it for a small profit, just because I kind of assumed he would dip down like this. I'm tempted right now to go and buy to go re-up and get another one before he gets traded. But with the whole Warriors thing, once again, I don't know if there's a team out there that is going to like pony up for Caruso, because he's not going to be like just super, super cheap. But because they were talking about Wiseman possibly getting traded as part of like this Caruso deal. So it kind of shows you that he has some sort of value. If, Wiseman, his value has gone down since the season began, but he's still considered like a decently valuable asset to their teams that really think they can develop him. So I don't think Caruso could stay with the Bulls. It's possible. But I think he's one of those players that people aren't necessarily like focusing on and could absolutely moon if he does get traded. So there's a part of me that wants to go and buy him and then just immediately list him, like buy him for like, let's go take a look at him right now. I'm curious what he's sitting at. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a gap here, but we can see it. Oh, yeah, yeah. I it's a 50-50 shot if I buy a Caruso. I'll put it that way. I think there's a window. Where you could buy him right now, and if he gets traded, just a lot of people weren't expecting it. They go rush to the marketplace. You get that like demand shock, and that supply shock from the demand, and he moons, and you're able to make a quick buck. But I wouldn't necessarily pick him up as a like quote unquote cheat code for a SoRare lineup, because his cap is 25, and if he got traded, he's probably getting traded to a competing team. I think he's a good piece to have if you're trying to win a championship. And as a result, I think his role gets lessened, and he's not putting up any like ceiling games. So yeah, I think Caruso is an interesting one to look at. Meanwhile, on the side where there are players that might be a little more interesting once some of these big guys are moved as the Bulls blow it up. Just real quick, Derrick Jones Jr. is a little interesting. $4, interesting dart throw. We're not even going to talk about him that much because I don't think he's particularly interesting. Andre Drummond is a little more interesting than Derrick Jones Jr. Just if he gets a little more run, he's a guy that still can kind of put up a 20-20 game. He has a decent cap, decent price. I don't plan on going out and buying him, but he might be worth watching. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to feel about Drummond, because the Bulls are a seller, but they're on the fence in the question of how much are they going to sell out? Like, are they really going to blow this team up? Or are they going to get rid of Levine and maybe a couple other pieces? Kobe White is someone else that I'm like, maybe he's worth watching. I don't think he's really worth picking up. $8 seems a little high, especially with that cap. But the one guy that I'm actually very interested in watching, I don't own one, and I don't plan on going and buying one before the trade deadline, is Ayo. So in a world where Caruso gets traded, because he has some sort of value, Ayo just gets a little more time. I believe Ayo is still starting. For the Bulls, I'm almost positive he's still a starter. So he's kind of already had that ceiling realized a little more than earlier in the season when he was a reserve player. But cap of 17 is pretty low. He has shown that he is able to put up some decently high scores. We got a 30, 37, 33, like totally capable here. And then, I'd say $13 is a little pricey for him right now. But on the flip side of things, especially if someone like Caruso is gone, he's going to get more usage. He's probably going to get some more minutes and opportunities. And also if Levine's gone, he's for sure is going to get some more shots up. And we could see like one of these future spikes for him, or he could be a bit of a cheat code, maybe right off the bat or maybe a little later in the season. Like I said, I don't own an Ayo. I don't plan on buying one before the trade deadline, but I do think he's someone that you for sure should watch. I would almost, if I had to pick between Caruso and Ayo, I feel like I would give the edge to buying a Caruso and trying to flip him rather than buying an AO and trying to play him in a lineup immediately. So short term, I'd give it to Caruso. Long term, I'd probably give it to AO. I don't know if that helps at all. All right. The next team, we have 6 selling teams. We are on number 4, and number 4 is the Rockets. So the Rockets, we all know since the beginning, are here to tank. They're here to enter the Wembanyama sweepstakes, similar to the Spurs and the Jazz. And I believe I did a SoRare steals on these guys. Yeah, I did. So we're not going to dive super deep into some of these players just because I've probably already talked about them. And we're 2 hours into the stream. And I think we still have like another, let's see, how many more teams do we have to cover? Another like 5 teams to cover, another 5 to 7 teams. So we're not going to dive super deep into some of these guys. But the 2 players I think the Rockets are going to be looking to trade away, we have Eric Gordon, who we're going to look at right away because he has been putting up, let's look at his scores to start, because he's been putting up some monster scores recently. We're seeing a bunch of 30s here, and we even saw a 42 that he dropped, which is pretty substantial. His cap is 27, which is not like an insane outperformance. And if he does get traded, he's a guy that's going to be coming off the bench and playing a specific role. I don't necessarily see a lot of opportunity for him to just go nuclear. But I do think there would be a decent amount of hype if Eric Gordon did get traded. So I would kind of put him in that basket of Caruso, where I would be tempted to buy him and then just immediately list him and hope he gets traded and I catch that pump as that happens. I don't think I'd be buying him for any type of lineup. I think his cap would have to come way down as he adjusts to his new role on a new team. But I do think he's going to get traded. He's not someone that I plan on buying before the trade deadline. He's someone that I would probably look at down the road once their price has dipped a little and this cap has gone down. Is someone that, you know, is interesting at the stretch of the end of the season. But the guy that I'm most interested that they're trading away would potentially be, if they do trade him away, is Jason Tate. Where is he? Okay. So I do have a Tate. I want him as a reward, and I still have him. I constantly list him and then delist him. So I don't exactly know how I feel about him. We can see that one thing that's interesting about him is his circulation is a little bit lower than a typical player who's played the entire season, because he has been a little on and off with injuries. Oh, what's up, Mike? Thanks for tuning in to hour 2. But Jason Tate is a player that, like I said, his circulation's a little lower because he's been on and off with injuries. So that's always exciting. If this player gets traded, we might see some supply shock where he shoots up a lot higher because there's not nearly as many cards to go around. Let's see. Evo Dreamer says, amazing content, just got caught all up. Plenty of money to be made during the trade deadline. Thanks for tuning in, Evo. And I totally agree. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's a lot of opportunities here. What excites me so much, I think there's a lot of opportunities to make some like seriously quick, like good money, which you can then go ahead and turn into like an interesting MVP for a champion lineup or something like that. But then also, I think there's a lot of opportunities where guys will suddenly become cheat codes that weren't cheat codes. And like that is super exciting for me because I love to try and be ahead of that curve. So anyways, I think Jason Tate is someone that could get traded. First of all, sitting at a price of $6, that's a pretty decent dart throw. He's got a cap of 15. He hasn't been performing particularly well if we look at his scores. And that's because, as you can see, he's just coming back from an injury. They're limiting his minutes. He's kind of trying to find a role on a team where all these guys are competing for usage. Everyone's competing for shots. Everyone's trying to define a role on this very weird team that doesn't have really any veterans. Kind of has a bit of a ball hog situation with Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green. So Jason Tate is someone I'm not super excited about if he gets kept by the Rockets. but I think he's someone that's very interesting if they go ahead and they trade him. He's someone that can facilitate the ball relatively well. He can create his own shot to a certain degree. And I think he's just he's one of those players you're picking up betting on him being traded. Or you're picking him if you're going to pick him up for lineups, he's someone you'd want to pick up after the trade deadline because he's probably going to get more run. One, as he comes back from the injuries, but two, as the Rockets continue to actively try and get Victor Wembanyama by tanking. So there will be windows where Jason Tate is just like a great play because for some reason Sengun, Kevin Porter Jr., and Jalen Green are all like injured or taking a rest or whatever they want to label it as. So if you're looking for a cheat code, I feel Jason Tate is more of a pickup post-trade deadline where maybe even see this price drop because he wasn't traded. But I do think there's an outside chance that he does get traded, and he's someone that if I don't have him listed already, I'm going to do that after the stream where I list him at a price that I like to sell him at. So if he does pump, I can get rid of him and get liquid. Because I do think he'd be interesting on another team, but I think he dips in price before he. I don't think he sustains that pump, just because I think whatever team he goes to, he still has to figure out his role. Considering he's trying to figure out his role with the Rockets right now. Now the players that I do think are interesting, if as this Rocket season continues on. Because they're trying to tank, you have Josh Christopher, who I think I bought very cheap and then foolishly sold for a small profit instead of holding on to him. He's been getting a little more run lately. Once again, yeah, as you can see, I sold him here, and I think I paid like, yeah, I didn't make much profit here when I could. I just missed the pump, which is super depressing. We don't like to do that here. But I think Josh Christopher is a little interesting. He'll probably get a little more run as the season continues, and they're trying out younger players and trying to see we're trying to actively tank. Josh Christopher probably isn't winning you any games. He's still kind of figuring out his ceiling. I think the other two players on this team that are interesting are Ty Washington Jr., who's shown some flashes when he's had some opportunity. He has a low cap, decent low price, like a bit of a dart throw here. And then Tari Eason, who unfortunately, I shout out to Ransom Reed if he's watching, but I believe he told me multiple times to buy, and I just forgot. And I think we're a little late on that now. And then two, yeah, I mean, he's been discovered in the sense of people are kind of seeing the ceiling this guy has. And he was talked about a lot before this recent big game he had. I think he put up a 55, 50. I was going to say 50. Gosh darn, I second guessed myself. But as you can see, I mean, he's been putting up some decent numbers. He can get in some more playing time. So right now is definitely not the time to buy him. But this is a player that's 1,000% worth watching because there will be other windows where, once again, he's a rookie. They're going to be playing him, trying to find out his ceiling. And he's not going to cost them entries into the Wembanyama sweepstakes because this guy is not winning you any games on his own. All right. We have two more teams on the selling side of things. This team I'm actually very interested in. It's the Detroit Pistons. I did make a SoRare Steals video on that. So once again, just encourage you to go and check that out. There's some players I've already kind of dove pretty deep into. Bojan being one of them. I think I talked about Sadiq Bey and a couple others. So Bojan is almost 1,000% going to be traded before the trade deadline. The dude is a scoring machine. As we can see, he's put up some really, really juicy numbers here, pretty consistently too. He has a cap of 34, so he's not going to become a cheat code when he gets traded. He's a player that could get traded to. Who was I listening to talking about him possibly in trade to? They might have said the Grizzlies. I don't remember. Gosh darn it. There's a team that I heard someone talking about that I thought like really piqued my interest. I thought he'd fit really well on there. But he's a guy that's probably going to take a back seat when he gets traded. So if you're going to buy a Bojan or you have one, this is a guy that you probably want to sell the pump on. As we can see right here, currently just really no trade speculation pump, which is kind of crazy because I think people who have really are really paying attention to the NBA know that it's almost 100% guaranteed that this guy gets traded. The Lakers want. There are multiple teams that want this guy. He's a great shooter. He can create spacing. He's a 3-and-D guy. So I might have to go. I might have to go and buy one after the stream. To be honest, I'm definitely tempted because I'm kind of surprised to see there's no run up here whatsoever. Oh shoot! Got a leg cramp. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, we're back. That was rough. Who says streaming isn't a physical activity? Oh, bit of a calf cramp there. Okay. Anyways, I think Bojan's a very interesting play. He is, like I said, sitting at $13, which is not terrible. Yeah, I don't know. I'm honestly shocked seeing this price graph and not seeing some sort of speculation buy here. I feel like this is almost a slam. I don't want to. Okay, not financial advice. It's a 50-50. I go and buy this after the stream, but I'm kind of shocked to see no speculation buys here right now. Yeah, exactly. I'm questionable for Monday. Thanks for checking out the stream, Joe. Appreciate it. But yeah, I think Bojan's going to get traded to another team. This is a guy we're going to see a big run up on when he does get traded, when the news happens. But he's a player that's definitely not going to be a cheat code. He's got a very high cap. That cap is almost for sure going to go down because he's going to become a piece on a team. He's going to go from being like one of the main guys to being like the third or fourth or fifth guy on a team. So he's someone that's post trade deadline, when his price inevitably drops along with his cap and people get really bummed about him. I think he's a player that's really interesting to go peek out. I will definitely be watching him. But he is also a player that I think is interesting to buy right now because he might pump. The other two players that the Detroit is probably going to trade is Saddiq Bey. I don't think Saddiq Bey is as interesting as Bojan. He's got the same cap. He's even a little higher priced. Personally, I am not. I'm almost positive I don't own one. Let me double check. Yeah, I don't own a Saddiq. I do not plan to buy one. If he gets traded, I will reassess a week or two after the trade deadline to see if he's an interesting buy. And then I think Alec Burks is also going to get traded. Out of the three, I do not care at all about Alec Burks. I do not want to own one under any circumstance, but he'll probably get traded. And the reason I mention this is because we're going to talk about the three players that might get a little bit of a boost based on these trades. Hamidou Diallo, shout out the Wolfpack. I'm not super hyped about him in SoRare. He probably will get bumped up on the depth chart, probably get a little more minutes, a little more usage, but he already has a cap over 20. His price is at $8. I can't really see him getting that much added value. So he's probably worth waiting on and just kind of seeing what happens. I think the same thing applies to Kevin Knox, even more so. But the one thing with Kevin Knox is he's going to get that small bump on the depth chart. If some trades go down, he'll probably get some more opportunities. And he is a young player. He's 23. So maybe we do see them let him get a little more run. So let's take a look here. I do love the $2 price. I love those type of dart throws. Those are great. And as you can see, I mean, this man pumped to $25. Let's also keep in mind this was very early when his circulation was significantly lower. So we're not going to see a $25 ceiling on him ever, unless the man is named a starter and starts putting up like 50, 60 point games. But I originally, when I made this list, I was not that high on Kevin Knox. I just noted him as probably getting an increase in usage and all that. But I might go and buy one because $2 is an interesting dart throw at the very least. And with a cap of 11, I kind of like that upside. So do with that what you may. And then really quick, I'm going to talk about Corey Joseph just because it's almost a meme at this point, how much I love Corey Joseph and how bullish I am on him. In terms of SoRare, I think Corey Joseph is in a unique situation. Let's zoom in here so we can see a little more. Let's do it again. All right. As you can see, I have bought and sold Corey Joseph probably more than any other player. I currently own 3, and who knows? I might go and pick up another one at $2. As you can see, Corey Joseph just has had a lot of verticality. He's a player that as soon as with Cade Cunningham out, usually this wouldn't happen, but because Cade's out for the season, there is such an opportunity that if one player sits, like if Killian Hayes sits, boom, Corey Joseph is like an instant cheat code. His cap is a little higher than I'd want right now. Also, it's important to note I think he's like currently has no injury, but he's coming off a back injury where he's missed a bunch of games. I don't think he's played a game since that injury yet. So he'll probably have some limited minutes, which will help bring this cap down, which I love to hear. But I think Corey Joseph he's a unique situation who the reason I bring him up is, if Bojan and Burks and Sadiq Bey are getting traded away, that just opens up more opportunity for Corey Joseph to get run because the Pistons are actively trying to lose since Cade is out for the season. So I'm probably like I said, I've bought and sold Corey Joseph more than anyone. As you can see, I've never unfortunately nailed the top here, but I have pretty consistently sold for a decent percentage increase in profits. I think Corey Joseph is particularly one of the easiest people to do this with, as long as he's healthy, and sounds like he's coming back. But the last player I want to talk about that I think has possibly the highest chance of getting an increase in usage and minutes is Isaiah Livers. I know he's not like a rookie, but he is still pretty young. He's a guy that I do think, oh gosh darn it, someone really laundering some money here. Oh my gosh, someone paid $400. Yeah, that doesn't seem sketchy at all. Oh shoot. Oh gosh darn it. Give me a sec, guys. Just cap it off at 10 here. Really quick, shout out to SoRare Data. I love this website. The amount of data they present is just beautiful. The ability to like really hone in and just look at everything, like big picture or like at small windows. I love SoRare Data so much. Shout out to Andrew. They're a great group. Oh gosh darn, I messed this up. Sorry guys. We're gonna have to zoom in again here. But yeah, shout out to Andrew and those guys. Truly just seem like a great group of guys. And their tool is super awesome. All right. So Isaiah Livers, he's a forward. I think with Bojan and possibly Sadiq Bey getting traded, as we can see, they're both considered forwards as well. I think Isaiah Livers being young, he just has that potential at getting some extra run. We haven't seen anything in terms of verticality, no like crazy spikes here. If we take a look at his scores too, there's nothing super exciting. He does have a 30 here. He was injured for a bit too, so keep that in mind. He's still kind of ramping up. This -4 almost makes me more excited because that means his cap is going to be abysmal probably once this 30 is eliminated. And the window might actually work out perfectly where before the trade deadline hits, this 30 is cut off and suddenly his cap is crazy low and he suddenly has way more usage in minutes. And for that reason, at $3, I'm actually really I don't own an Isaiah Livers. I almost bought one before the stream, but decided not to. But he will be someone that there's probably an 80% chance that I at least pick up one of him, just because I think there's some decent upside. And I think it's kind of the perfect storm in terms of where his cap will be when the trade deadline happens and the increase in usage and the current price and all that. So I really like Isaiah Livers. I honestly, out of everyone here, I'm the most excited about, but obviously extremely excited about Corey Joseph. Shout out Corey Joseph. I love Corey Joseph. But if I had to pick someone else, cough coming, sorry. All right. Isaiah Livers, I'm probably the most excited about outside of Corey Joseph. And then Kevin Knox is an interesting dart throw when he's, that cheap. So yeah. That is the Detroit Pistons. Oh, look at that. Ransom Reed buying up some livers. Well, don't pump the floor too high yet. I need to get one. But I like it. Oh shoot, I just closed SoRare data. All right. And the last team I have on the list for selling, another team that I'm actually really excited to see what they do. Just because I think it's gonna be a bit chaotic, and a little fun to watch. And that is the Charlotte Hornets. Now, the Charlotte Hornets, once again, I made a SoRare Steals video on. And as a result, some of these players I'm not going to take a super deep dive into because you can kind of go and watch that video and get some perspective there. Oh, shout out We the People. Dude, I said it's going to probably be a 2 to 4 hour stream. We're really diving into the weeds here. I want to give everyone lots of opportunities. I want everyone to have a lot more information going into this trade deadline. And I feel like we got to do it now before making this. Like if I made this a video or did this a live stream a couple days later, it would be significantly less valuable. So I just want to get as much information out there as possible, but we are battling. You can kind of hear it in my voice, maybe. I'm still probably not 100% recovered from being sick. So we're really out here. We're really out here battling. Thank you, Ransom Reed. I appreciate that. All right, so we're talking about the Hornets. I think the Hornets are super interesting because this team could sell literally everything besides LaMelo and just restart 100%. They could do it, and it would make sense for them to do it. On my list of people that I think they could sell, I think they could trade away Rozier. I think they could trade away Plumlee. I think Oubre is for sure getting traded away. I think PJ Washington is almost for sure getting traded away. Hayward is almost for sure getting traded away. And even Jalen McDaniels could get traded away. I know he's a very young player that a lot of people are excited about and see a lot of upside in, but I think it's not impossible for the Charlotte to trade him. So I mean, they could throw away just trade away the entire team. This might be the Jazz 2.0 here, where they have some very interesting players with some decent upside who are proven to be good players. PJ Washington has proven he's not bad. Gordon Hayward, when healthy, is great. Terry Rozier is an animal, especially when LaMelo's not on the court and he gets just free reign. And all these guys could be gone. So I think there is tremendous opportunity here with the Hornets, and I think this is going to be one of the most fun teams to watch as the trade deadline approaches. So right off the bat, I think Rozier is interesting just because I think this price is super undervalued. I bought a Rozier in full transparency. I still own one. I bought one for $30, and I still thought that was a really good deal. But $20 for a guy who can drop a 50, 60 any day, that just seems incredibly undervalued. And if this guy goes to a not so good team, and is able to just run loose with usage, he is going to be putting up crazy SoRare scores. So I really I'm so tempted to buy another Rozier. I've looked at Rozier so many times and been like, do I buy? Do I buy? And I ultimately haven't. But I think especially if you're looking for I don't know if he's like a border MVP caliber player for a champion lineup. And if he gets traded to a bad team, I think he instantly like locks in as a MVP caliber player. I mean, he's not going to put up like Luka numbers or anything like that. Don't get me wrong, but I think he can drop like a 40 or 50. I threw him into my Eastern Conference, I think, or whatever, and my no cap, and he put up a 46 and a 40. Like, and this is with LaMelo on the team, like taking away usage from him. So, like I said, I just think there's a lot of upside here. $20 is kind of crazy when you consider, like, I mean, LaMelo is sitting at 100, and his cap is lower than Terry Rozier. Like LaMelo has a higher ceiling than Terry Rozier, but I think Terry Rozier's ceiling is pretty incredible for the price you're paying. Anyways, enough ranting on that. Mason Plumlee's kind of interesting. I don't think he's a walking double-double. He has shown some ceiling games. I don't think he's like someone you need to go buy before the trade deadline, but he might be worth watching once he gets traded. Oubre, same thing, mostly because this guy has a what the hell? I thought he had a super low circulation. I feel like he hasn't played in forever. What the hell? Did they mint that many at the beginning? Oh, wow, they did. Yeah. So he hasn't played for a while. It's been basically a month since they've minted a new one of him, and he's sitting at 700, which is crazy. And I mean, to that point, just real quickly, it kind of shows that, if there's a player who was injured at the beginning of the season, very advantageous to like look at their cards because they're going to have a significantly lower circulation than everyone else, because at the beginning of the season is when way more were being minted, and that pace has definitely slowed down a bit. I think Kelly Oubre is going to get traded, but I do think he's someone that probably gets traded to a good team. So he's this guy, I think when he was playing, was putting up some pretty crazy. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. I mean, 50s and 40s like consistently. But as you can see, he hasn't played in forever. I think he's someone that probably gets traded to a good team that's trying to make a playoff push, and I don't think he's putting up these types of numbers. I think he's more or less, sitting in a corner, shooting up threes, maybe getting some steals every now and then. But in terms of playing him or him being a cheat code, Kelly Oubre is definitely not that guy. But I do think he's someone that people have kind of forgotten about. We can see there's a teeny bit of like speculative buys here. Seems like people are kind of dipping their toes into the Kelly Oubre bag. But he's someone that could run up a bit just because he's not on everyone's mind. Kelly Oubre hasn't played in a while. No one knows his status, but it's almost guaranteed that he's going to get traded. And most people believe that the reason he hasn't played isn't because he's injured, but because the Hornets are looking to trade him. So I think he's interesting. I think he runs up once he gets traded, but I wouldn't. If you have him, I would hold him once he gets. I would list him before he gets traded, and if he gets traded, I hope he hits that number, because I don't think he's worth holding on to for a lineup. Who's the other guy? Jalen McDaniels is the one I want to look at, though, out of the guys I have listed for trading, because I think he's similar to Kennedy Chandler in the sense that whether he gets traded or gets kept by the Hornets, I think there's a potential for him to have a lot of upside either way. So first of all, if we take a look at his price, we can see that, we can see some crazy verticality here. Like boom, 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 boom. Like there's so many different moments because so many players have been injured and on and off with the Hornets that it's chaos. So, he dips and then he shoots off. He's currently on a bit of a dip right now, going down from like $15 or like more like $12 to like to like 8-ish, 9-ish. So I think Jalen McDaniels is a very interesting pickup. He is a little bit expensive, but I like this cap. And I think he's an interesting dart throw because if there's an argument that the Hornets keep him because he's very young, he's 24, and as they trade away this basically their entire starting lineup, Jalen McDaniels gets way more usage, way more run time, and has that ceiling to put up something crazy. If we look at his scores real quick, I think he's had a couple. Yeah, he's had a couple bigger games. And a decent outperformance of 21. I wouldn't say he's an instant cheat code if they keep him and they trade him, but I do think he's on that borderline of being named that. And if he does start getting way more minutes and really shows a ceiling higher than like a 40, then he is an instant cheat code for a couple of weeks. But even if they trade him, Jalen McDaniels is a player that has a potential to take on a bigger role on either a bad team or take on a more pivotal role on a good team. So I think there's a lot of outs for Jalen McDaniels. I don't own one, as you can see. I don't think I plan to buy one either. It's a little too expensive for me, and I just think there are way more interesting dart throws that I'm going to target. But he's a player I'm going to be watching, and I feel like I think there's a decent chance I will regret not getting him. I could be wrong, but I think he's very interesting whether they trade him or they don't. Going back to the players on the Hornets that will really benefit from them just selling it off everything. The first one, I believe, is, where is he? Bryce McGowan's. Very low price, very low cap. I believe he's pumped a couple of times. Yeah, look at that. He's pumped to like $12. I mean, if you can buy for 2 and sell for 10, that's a 5x. That's beautiful. And if you're someone like Ransom Reed, who will probably go and buy 20 of them, that is a $40 to $200, just like that. I think Bryce McGowan is interesting. He hasn't particularly shown anything special on the score side, but as you can see, he really hasn't been given like really any opportunity to do so. He is also a rookie. He's 20 years old. I think he's interesting. I think he's one of those guys that as the Hornets sell it all, they really go ahead and they kind of see what they got with him. As you can see, I mean, I did buy one a long time ago and flipped one, but since then there's been a couple little pumps here. Yeah, $2 is not bad. $2 is not bad. I will say one thing that's kind of cool is we saw a significant dip in the marketplace that has since kind of recovered a little bit because SoRare added the Premier League, but there really couldn't be a better time for that to happen than right before the trade deadline. So I think that's one reason I wanted to stream, and why, like, as I was like writing out this document that I'm referencing, and I started to record a video before I just decided to stream. I was getting so excited and realizing this would be there's so much to talk about, because like someone like him who was just sitting at like $6 before, which is not a great dart throw. That's not like, you probably want a nice dart throw is someone you're paying $3 or less that could pop. So he went from being someone you probably didn't want at all to like, holy cow, like $2, why not? So yeah, Bryce McGowan's, I think, super interesting. I don't own one. He's probably someone I'm going to buy before the trade deadline. Dennis Smith Jr., we're not really going to talk about him. His price is like kind of low, which is exciting. His cap is low. And, between LaMelo getting injured a bunch and the Hornets possibly like really selling it all, Dennis Smith Jr. might get a lot more opportunities for runs, as they're just like, yeah, we don't care, like, go in there. But also when he did play, they were winning games, so they might even bench him. Theo Maledon is on my list, but he doesn't count because for some reason SoRare does not mint any Theo Maledon. I do not understand. There's clearly something wrong with their code or something like that. There's like 3 Theo Maledon cards that exist or something like that. yeah, if we look at I don't understand this. Look at this. This is since November. Like, so the people who have Theo Maledon, they're not selling him. Yeah, it's stupid. This is I don't know if you guys are aware. This is some guy I've been looking at for a while, and this is I probably need to send out a tweet to SoRare NBA and be like, why is this guy not being minted when he's playing? There's 4 limited cards that exist of him and a single rare. Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense. Anyways, the last person on my list, well, JT Thor I have on there. I think he's an interesting little dart throw. Very low cap, decently low price, a little higher than I would want to pay for such a dart throw. But he's one of those guys. It might be worth looking into. But the guy that I'm really interested in talking about and has been talked ad nauseum by Mike and other people in the Discord and all that stuff is Mark Williams. Now, Mark Williams has been a hot topic for quite a while, just because people have seen how incredible of a player this guy is and how explosive he is, like his ability to bounce, like just a lot of upside here. And it seems the Hornets are not playing this guy. So I think the thing that's interesting to Mark Williams is we're starting to see people kind of give up on him. I feel like Mark Williams is, or not Mark Williams. It's not his fault. It's the Thunder's, not Thunder. It's the Hornets head coach. It's his fault because he does not want to play Mark Williams for some reason. And I feel like people are starting to just break. People that were really high on him and maybe overpaid for him are just really just every week he's destroying their lineups because he's not being given the minutes he probably should be given. So I think we're in this unique position where, Charlotte ships out the entire team and then Mark Williams finally starts to get some more run. So we might have this perfect storm where, as you can see, we're seeing a little bit of a dip. I'm not really trying to buy Mark Williams at this price. I'm trying to buy him below $10 personally. But, we might see that opportunity where enough people give up on him and then he gets a little more run after the trade deadline and suddenly is like a pretty valuable player to have. So I'm watching Mark Williams. I do plan to buy one. I just don't know when. Whew. All right. We have now gone over the buying and selling portions of this live stream. We've talked about the teams that we think are buying to try and make a move and the teams that are selling to get draft picks and get assets. And now the thing that I'm most interested about, and this might be where I get a little more pushback from the chat, as people are like, no, I don't think this team is going to sell or this team's going to buy. But this is the section that I have labeled as on the fence. These are 6 teams, or really 5. We'll talk about a 6 team, but I really don't even have any targets for them just because I'm so confused of what they're actually going to do. But these are teams that I think could really go either way. They could become total sellers and just be like, give up on the season and get ready for next season. Or they could be buyers and desperately be trying to make a move. All right. So the first team I have on this list is the Minnesota Timberwolves. And this one's a little boring here because in terms of I think the Timberwolves are going to try and trade away D'Angelo Russell. I believe his contract ends this year, and I believe they have no interest in trying to re-sign him. Where is he? There he is. So I think there's a chance we see D'Angelo Russell go to a pretty garbage team and put up some pretty decent numbers, all things considered. He's sitting at $22, which is just more than I would ever want to pay for D'Angelo Russell. His cap is way too high. But there is that slight upside, like I said, that he gets traded to a bad team and he just puts up meaningless garbage stats that equals a high SoRare score. If we look at his previous scores here, we can see, he has the potential to do it. He's dropped some 50s, some 48s. In terms of SoRare, I don't know. I can't stand D'Angelo Russell, not as like a person or anything. I just like he just feels like a very uninspired player who we know exactly where his ceiling is at, and he's not going to be a championship level player he's not going to be a player that you need to ultimately win it all. So as a result, I tend to be very down on D'Angelo Russell. But like I said, I think there is a potential where you could make a case that this man will be a valuable SoRare player post trade deadline. However, on the keeping side of things, like players that I think might get an improve might get a boost if D'Angelo Russell gets traded. I really have no one listed because I mean, you could argue maybe Anthony Edwards or someone else who people have kind of already realized the value of. But one, I think if they trade D'Angelo Russell, they're trying to get another point guard. They're not just going to be like stoked with whoever they have as their backup. I don't actually know off the top of my head. What was I going to say? Oh, but I don't think anyone really gets like that significant of a boost. So talking about the Timberwolves is kind of boring, but I just wanted to point out I think D'Angelo Russell maybe gets traded. It's like a 50-50. And if that's the case, he's probably worth watching and seeing how he performs or what team he goes to. The next team I have on my list I think is a little more interesting, and that team is the New York Knicks. Now, realistically, the Knicks don't have any chance at winning a championship just because, one, they don't have the talent, they don't have the depth, they don't have a good enough coach, and they're the New York Knicks. Like, that's just the reality of the situation, unfortunately, for them. However, not having any chance at a ring has never stopped the Knicks from trying to make a blockbuster move for seemingly no reason. So as a result, I don't know if the Knicks are on the fence or if they are going to go. I don't know if the Knicks are going to sell and try to build on all the positive improvements they've made this year, or if they are going to like really go for it all and take a swing at things. I would hope that they make some trades to make their team better and like maybe focus on next year and really try to be ready then. Because I mean, I think they make the playoffs this year, but like I said, there's absolutely zero chance this team has any opportunity at winning a ring, even if they make a big trade, because they have just multiple areas that they need to be better at. But as a result, that makes it really fun to look at because I think there's a chance that the Knicks trade away quickly. Oh, wait a second, guys. Sorry. I need to change this to dollars. There we go. All right. So on my selling side, players that I think the Knicks could possibly trade away, we have Emmanuel Quickly. He's going for like $18, 26 cap. I don't love this purchase. He is a little inflated, partly because he's a Knick. He's popular as a result of that. I think more people know who he is than would usually know who he is. But also, you know, he's kind of the first man off the bench if Brunson and or Barrett aren't playing. So his cap is kind of already a little bit realized, and his price is kind of already a little bit baked in. Now, if we look at his scores, we've seen, you know, he's put up some crazy scores here. I believe this is when Brunson and Barrett were sitting. So we do see like potentially massive ceiling there, which is awesome. But for $20 or I guess $16, it's just hard for me to be willing to like throw that much money at such a dart throw, because I feel like there's a very good chance he doesn't get traded. Like we said, these guys are on the fence. It's really hard to predict what the Knicks are going to do. I feel like there's a very good chance he just doesn't get traded. He's the same position he's at. And then I would say $16 is almost a little overvalued until, you know, inevitably he gets another window where maybe Brunson and or Barrett aren't playing and he gets, we'll see a pump like this because of his proven ceiling that he's shown he has, where he went up to 35. So I definitely am not going to buy it quickly. we have, yes, the best way to put it, jump shoot, 100% chance the Knicks are going to nick. But let me pull up my document. Okay. Next person I have on that list is Obi Toppin. I feel like there's a much higher chance that Toppin gets traded, partly because the Knicks just don't seem like thrilled with where he's ended up. Probably partly because they could have picked Halliburton instead of Toppin, and they went with Toppin, which, he's not a bad player by any means, but he's no Halliburton, which is what I think they're trying to get. So he's at a much more reasonable price of $7. He's got a very attractive cap at 11, and he is one of those players that would probably get traded to a not so good team for assets because he is still pretty young. He's 24. He hasn't been given like an insane amount of opportunity to like really find out his ceiling. We can see last year, apparently he just went absolutely bonkers for a while. But as we can see, this year he has been incredibly disappointing. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't love Toppin. Once again, I don't plan on buying him by any means. He is on a bit of a downtrend though, so if you want to watch him, yeah, I don't know. If you're buying Toppin, you're basically saying, "Oh, I think he's going to get traded. I'm going to try and sell the pump." Because, and maybe, okay, I'll take that back a little bit. If Toppin does get traded to a bad team, there is a chance that he is an instant cheat code for a bit. A cap of 11 is pretty crazy. You send him to a terrible team where he's starting all of a sudden and getting consistent minutes, he can start outperforming by a pretty massive margin. So it's not the worst start throw. Especially at $8, especially if you're comparing him to Emmanuel Quickly at 18. That is not a dart throw I want to make. Obi Toppin, maybe I'd make, but a little on the fence there, partly because we don't know what the Knicks are going to do, and I have a hard time making a bet on anything, trying to predict the Knicks' future. Three more guys I really want to talk about that they might trade away. We have Cam Reddish, which, according to all reports, Cam Reddish is for sure going to get traded. It almost seems to be like a question of when as opposed to if in this case. We can see, price of $8 about, cap of 15, which is kind of nice. He has shown in this, as we saw in that giant spike he's had, he did show in that one stint where like Thibodeau like allowed the man to play, which, I cannot believe that Thibodeau is still the Knicks coach when he just does not understand how to manage players' minutes or rotation whatsoever, clearly. But when he did get to play, he did put up some crazy numbers. The problem is if Cam Johnson gets traded, he's not getting traded to a bad team. He's probably getting traded to a pretty good team who is looking for some scoring off the bench. And so as a result, that ceiling is kind of capped by that situation he's probably going to get traded to. I will not be buying a Cam Reddish. I don't think he's particularly great of a dart throw. The one situation you'd be hoping for if you have a Cam Reddish or you do want to go and buy one is he gets traded to a team where he's like the 6th, 7th man off the bench and is able to put up significantly higher numbers than his 15 cap would kind of indicate that he would be putting up. So if he gets traded to a team where he can be the 6th or 7th man off the bench and get like 20, 25 minutes a game, he's an instant cheat code for a bit, which is pretty dope. Okay. Oh, the last two guys, we're going to kind of group these two guys together because I don't think they're worth talking about. We're not going to pull up their price charts or anything. But that's Derrick Rose and Evan Fournier. Where's Fournier? Yeah, there he is. Derrick Rose and Evan Fournier. Both have a low cap. Derrick Rose is a little more interesting because his price is a bit lower. If he gets traded to some garbage team, there's a chance. There's a small chance we see Derrick Rose end up on the Bulls again, partly because, the Knicks would send some. I could see a situation where the Knicks send some picks as well as like Fournier and Rose over to the Bulls for like Levine. I don't know. I don't know how the salary matches up, but that would be a case where the Bulls are blowing it up and the Knicks are trying to dump some salary and get a good player type of deal. And we know that they want to move off Fournier and they probably want to move off Rose at this point. I'm not super excited about either of these guys. They do have a low cap. Like I said, Rose, if out of the two, is probably the more interesting dart throw just because he's cheaper. So if he gets traded, there's a lot higher opportunity for a bit of a boom there. But yeah, I don't think they're worth even like pulling up their price charts. Now, the three guys we're going to talk about that are currently on the Knicks that might get some increase in usage, especially if they make a big trade. Jericho Sims, which I know he's been just incredibly awful. He kind of fits in that Mark Williams tier where, except this time it's Sims' fault, not the coach's fault, where Sims is just breaking people at this point because they play him and he just tanks their lineups because he's underperforming to the utmost. But Sims is still a little interesting at $8 or I think $5. Yeah, $5. Jeez, that's rough. I guess people have officially given up on him. But Sims, I think Sims is a little interesting at a $5 floor price just because we kind of saw how high he can peak. And I think if he miraculously started performing really well, he would immediately spike all the way back up because people want Sims to be good again because they either are holding on to him because they don't want to sell at a loss, or they like sold and then they're like, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, and they go and buy again. So I think the gunpowder is there. We just need the spark, and that spark would be Sims to put up a decent stretch of games, but he could potentially benefit. The flip side of that is Isaiah Hartenstein, kind of the same deal, except he's kind of shown that he can perform a little more, and that's why we see higher floor price, slightly higher cap. And then Miles McBride, I think, is kind of interesting. I actually really like Miles McBride a lot personally, not for any super particular reason. Just he kind of watching him play. I think he's got he's got a spark off the bench. We can kind of see that he's had some peaks for sure, and he's kind of cooled off as he kind of fallen out of the rotation a bit again. Once again, Tom Thibodeau's awful coach when it comes to a rotation and making sure to include like promising players and all that. He tends to run guys into the ground, blah blah blah. But under $5, interesting play. He could even get traded as an asset to kind of fill in as they pick up a bigger player. So either way, I like Miles McBride. None of these guys I've just mentioned I plan on picking up, just FYI, but I thought we'd run through them. Knicks, it ultimately comes down to, like Jumpshoot said, I'll pull it up again, 100% chance Knicks are going to nick. I agree, which means they're very unpredictable and not worth like really gambling on. All right, number 3 on the teams that are on the fence, we have the Atlanta Hawks. Now, I already made a SoRare Steals video on this. So once again, as I've said before, with all the guys we've looked at, I'm not going to dive super deep into some of these players because I've already done so on the video. And if you really want some more insight onto the players, you can go check that out. So the 2 players that I think the Hawks could potentially trade, I mean, John Collins, they've been trying to trade for 3 lifetimes at this point. It's insane that he's still on this team when they've basically told him, like, we don't want you. You're not part of our future plans, blah, blah, blah. I feel bad for the guy at this point. I personally wouldn't pick up a John Collins. I think he's an interesting piece for a lot of teams. I don't think he's a very good SoRare play, whether he stays with the Hawks or whether he gets traded. So we'll leave it at that. The other player I think that has a really high potential of getting traded is Clint Capella. And maybe it's just because I'm very out on Clint Capella. And this probably fits into the bias that I feel like Clint Capella is just ancient when in reality he's younger than me, which is kind of depressing when you think about it. He's only 28. But I think there's potential for them to trade away Clint Capella. One, because he just has some value, and two, they have Okongwu, who is an absolute monster. If you've watched my SoRare Steelers video, if you've seen me on Shot Tank, I am super bullish on Okongwu. I love Onyeka Okongwu. I think he's just a really incredible player. Yeah, I could gush about him. I think he's very explosive, can put up high block games. Really exciting player with a really exciting future. As you can see, I currently own 2. I kind of am waiting I might potentially buy another one. Even if Clint Capella doesn't get traded, Okongwu is the person. I mean, okay, if Clint Capella does get traded, Okongwu benefits by far the most. But even if he doesn't get traded, Clint Capella is injury prone, and Okongwu will absolutely get windows of opportunity between now and the end of the season. 100%. What was I going to say? Okongwu. Oh, so Okongwu, the person I'm most excited about. I might pick up another one. And if Capella gets traded, I think Okongwu absolutely moonshots in value and in price. But if he doesn't, like I said, I'm still pretty bullish on Okongwu regardless. And then the other guy that I just think is worth pointing out, because John Collins and Clint Capella are both big men, they're both forwards, is Jalen Johnson, who, there's nothing super exciting about Jalen Johnson, but he just might get a lot more opportunity to have an increase in minutes. As we can see, he's averaging 12 minutes per game. His price is a little high for a dart throw here, but if you think Capella or John Collins is going to get traded, he will obviously benefit from that. And with a cap of 13, he's one of those players who might be considered an instant cheat code. I actually wouldn't want to play him in a lineup, but if we see a massive pump like this, I would definitely want to sell him. So, it's hard to know if Collins actually gets traded, but if he does, yeah, having a Jalen Johnson might be pretty profitable. So he's the other guy on the list. I don't know. There's a part of me that feels like I will regret not buying him, but there's the other part of me that just does not want a Jalen Johnson under any circumstance unless I'm guaranteed that John Collins is going to get traded, and we are the farthest away from that. Okay, so actually, I thought I had 2 more teams to talk about, but I forgot we already talked about the Nets at the beginning because of the whole Kyrie chaos. So the last team we're going to talk about is, I think, possibly they're up there. They're one of the most interesting teams by far. They're definitely the most interesting team that is on the fence, and that is the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors truly could sell everything or make a giant move, and it really, I don't think, would surprise anyone. Yeah, they're in such a weird position where they have so many legitimately good players, but their team is just bad. And I don't know. I've never been super high on Fred VanVleet, but I mean, he was an all-star last year. I know he's had some health problems with his back as well. But as you can see, just with these high caps, these guys are putting up numbers. Gary Trent Jr. has a 36. I don't think anyone, unless you're paying attention to Gary Trent Jr. on SoRare, I think seeing that he is averaging 36 SoRare points per game over the last 10 games is kind of a bit of a shock. You would not think they're putting up these numbers and losing so often. So obviously the $1 million question is, what do the Raptors do? So first off, I think the one thing that the Raptors are almost certainly going to do is trade OG Anunoby. I think maybe earlier in the season it was a little more up in the air, but it seems like OG is extremely valued by multiple teams. There are reports that the Grizzlies and Pelicans are in a bidding war to get him, almost because of the fact that they don't want the other team to get him. So the Raptors just might be in a position where the price is too good to refuse for OG Anunoby. And if that's the case, I love buying an OG before the trade deadline. As you can see, I just bought a second one. I already bought one earlier when I was playing him in some lineups. But I think $22 is a bit of a steal right now. Not because I think he's going to go to he could go to a team and absolutely put up bonker numbers again. Because when he was healthy at the beginning of the season, this guy was dropping 50s and 40s and 50s, like without a problem. And that part of the reason why is his defense is very good. He's consistently getting steals. I still think he's averaging, maybe not anymore, maybe he's averaging most steals in the NBA per game, but 1.5 is nothing to like brush off. Like, that's pretty impressive. I really like OG. And as we can see, he's just had this downward trend for an extended period of time where we haven't seen a pump. So I do think he's a little bit ripe for a pump. And then also just people are not speculative buying that he's going to get traded, even though he's almost, it sounds like it's a done deal. It just seems like where he's going because the asking price is so juicy that some team is going to give and overpay for him. So I think OG is super interesting. Like I said, I bought a second one because I just felt like the price was a little too low. I think at the very least, he's just a $30 card. And a 25 cap is kind of pretty juicy, considering the guy can double that when he's healthy. And especially if he's on a team where he has more opportunities maybe to perform a little more consistently. So I really like OG a lot. Fred VanVleet, shout out to TST. I know TST, I believe he said it on Shot Tank. He said that if they trade OG, he hopes they trade Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. as well. So I'm kind of going off. There's been reports that both Gary Trent Jr. and Fred VanVleet will also be traded. So based on that, and then based on TST's perfect world, we're going to kind of assume that both of those guys, there's a good chance they get traded. Fred VanVleet, $30. So $30 is a lot to pay for Fred VanVleet. But the flip side is he almost certainly goes to a bad team of some sort and puts up like garbage numbers or like puts up great SoRare scores, but like garbage stats that are kind of meaningless. So it's weird to call him a dart throw, but I don't know, because it's like the one problem is I'm just like, what team would pay what Fred VanVleet's probably worth? Because I think he's struggled this season. There's questions about his health. It's like realistically, how much are the Raptors going to get for him? Are they just better holding on to him? But the flip side of that is, are they going to pay this guy after the season is over? So is it better just to get what you can for him? So I don't know. Fred VanVleet, I'm definitely not buying a Fred VanVleet. I think my $30 could be much more useful elsewhere. But I do think he's a fun player to kind of watch as this trade deadline goes down. And I think him being traded is more interesting in terms of what happens to the rest of the Raptors. Same thing with Gary Trent Jr. I have absolutely no interest in buying him. You know, he could go to a team that needs shooting and could be interesting, but which is such a high cap and a pretty decently high price. I don't really want to spend that much to get Gary Trent Jr., and I don't think anything too significant happens if he gets traded for his card, at least. So besides OG, who I think is going to get traded, but is a very interesting buy, the three players that I'm very interested in are Malachi Flynn, let's just start with one. Malachi Flynn, who has gone all the way down to $4. I just bought one today, as you can see. I think Malachi Flynn is very interesting, especially if you're trading away two massive usage guards such as Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. I think we've seen quite a lot of verticality with him in the past. I think a good chunk of you guys might remember when this happened, when he absolutely mooned because of injuries. And this would essentially be the same thing. If they trade away those two guys, Malachi Flynn is just a usage oasis, and gets that chance to put up some pretty high scores. So I think he's a very interesting purchase, and potentially just an insane, like this level of a cheat code if both those two guys get traded, because his cap is just like so low. Like this is like one of those guys you throw in to try and like squeeze in the big dogs on your team. Like this cap is so low, and he could suddenly be like the starting point guard on this team. If the Toronto Raptors decide to chip it all off. So I really like Malachi Flynn a lot. Juancho Herman-Gomez is kind of the guy that might replace OG if he gets traded. I don't know. I think he'd at the very least get like some more consistent usage as the team kind of decides that they're tanking for the year. They're packing it in. I do love Juancho, and the one thing is we haven't seen a lot of movement with him, even as Toronto has dealt with a lot of injuries and Pascal Siakam sitting and all that. So I know his price is very cheap, like under $3 is always, if it's under $3, it's a decent dart throw, I feel like always, especially if they're higher up on the depth chart like Juancho is. But I don't know. I just feel like not a lot of people are super excited about him regardless. So it might not be worth might not be worth scooping up even at that low price. However, this guy's more interesting just because of the fact that he's so insanely cheap. And that's Jeff Downton Jr. So he is currently the third string point guard on the depth chart. Let's really zoom in here. As you can see, for transparency as always, I own two of him. We're really going to have to dive deep because no one wants this guy. And for some reason, people have been money laundering with him. All right. Downton Jr., if he moves up to the backup point guard, there's a chance he gets usage. He has a incredibly low cap. And the only reason I'm even somewhat interested in him is that he's under $1, which is just like such an insanely low price. If he doesn't pop off, it's like whatever, right? As long as you're not buying like 500 of him, like it's just so criminally low. People are trying to get anything for him as they get him as a reward from their lineups, as like I would assume tier 5 reward. So as a result, because of that, I feel like he's an interesting like potential cheat code / selling when he like pumps because the Raptors have sold off. Yeah, I don't know. I probably don't buy another one of him. I'm content with having two. But yeah, I don't know. This one's a crazy dart throw. The only reason I'm even mentioning it is just because he's so cheap. Jump Shoot saying Coloco. I know that a couple players or a couple people, like I know TST has talked about him multiple times. Let's go ahead and find him and just take a look. The reason why Coloco wasn't on my list though is he's a center. So unlike Malachi Flynn, who's a guard who might benefit greatly from two guards being traded away, I don't think the Raptors move on from Pascal Siakam or any of their bigger guys. So as a result, like they're not trading away Scotty Barnes, they're not trading away Pascal Siakam. So as a result, his ceiling is really capped. If you want to buy him for injury purposes, sure, but he's not going to get a massive. I mean, maybe he gets a massive bump because people are dumb. If some serious trades go down for the Raptors, but I don't think he should get any sort of meaningful bump. Let's move this to the 28th real quick. I don't think he should get any meaningful bump from trades because he's still going to be behind all these guys. He should be in the same position that he's in now and the same position that Malachi Flynn is currently in, which is just lost in the bench. But like I said, I mean, for $5, objectively speaking, just big picture, it's not the worst dart throw. Decent cap, decent price. Pascal Siakam, like we said, has struggled with injuries a bit. So maybe, he continues to, and maybe they keep, and if I think, I guess the one exception to that is, like, let's say the Raptors really just throw out the baby with the bathwater here and sell off everyone. They might let Koloko play more just because they're trying to see what they got, right? But yeah, Birch is definitely lost in that bench mob too. Raptors don't really seem to have a problem with big men, or at least having big men. I don't know if any of them besides Siakam and like Scotty Barnes and stuff are good. But it's just, yeah, I guess you could make the case. You can make the case if, they trade off a bunch of big assets. Koloko will get some run at the end of the season because they're trying to see what they got with their draft pick. But I would just wait to buy him because there will be more minted. His circulation will be higher. His price will almost certainly be lower. It's just someone you don't have to buy before the trade deadline, and that's kind of what we're talking about this stream. So, but I don't hate him. I don't hate him for sure. Anyone who's a rookie, especially on a team that's deciding to tank, is a very interesting player to at least watch on SoRare because that team could decide, oh, you're going to start now. We're shutting down Siakam for the last month of the season. Let's like really see what you got. So yeah. All right. Well, we did it. We went over 3 hours, which honestly isn't absolutely terrible. I was worried that, this might be a 4 or 5 hour stream. So thank you to everyone who stuck around and hung out and, dropped some messages in the chat. I appreciate it. Hopefully this video and stream was somewhat useful. I hope there's some players. I think I try to make it as extensive as possible that no matter what your budget, no matter what type of player you're looking for, there's someone in here for you that might be interesting to go ahead and try and scoop. So yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for hanging out. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out, if you don't have a SoRare account, make sure to create an account in the description below. You know the drill. And we'll see you guys next time. Oh, wait. I'm not sure. Oh, I'm not sure what you're saying, Mike, but yeah, thanks guys. We'll see you next time.
Please clap.